Hey, Thomas. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Lauren. How you doing?
Not bad. How are you?
All right.
Hey,
Uh,
you want to hash out our whole differences of opinion on different tokens and other things right
yeah,
here,
let's
right
do
now
it.
on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, first, let me just say I respect your opinion, value your, you as a friend, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I even understand where you're coming from. I just think maybe our perspectives are different in that I am more solely on just pursuing the Bitcoin train right now and making sure that Bitcoin adoption goes forward. So a lot of these other projects, if I ever just see like one thing, either centralization or like security or unlimited, like I just automatically shut it off and then just keep pursuing the Bitcoin thing. So when I'm going in and firing away, because I think one of the points that I had maybe that didn't come across right was putting your integrity at question, and I wanted to make sure that you didn't think that I was calling that into play. So I'll just stop there.
Yeah, I never took it that way, Lauren. I would just say, I mean, I'll give you my background, and you can get an assess where I'm coming from. So when I had, a management consulting company focused on technology stuff, and every year I would like lay out like, okay, what's our agenda for the coming year, and at the end of 2016, I was like saying, hey, I've been following Bitcoin for some time, and I even followed crypto projects before Bitcoin, around DigiGold and all these kind of BitGold and stuff like that. And I was very interested in cryptography because I did a lot of that back in my early career days. So I was interested in the topic. But anyway, so we were working on um, automation projects, and we were looking for, and what was fascinating to me was the whole crypto tokens that would enable the facilitation of automation of reconciliation of data and economics through systems. So what you couldn't do is create these automated workflows with multiple parties and then have a manual reconciliation process for it. Just wouldn't work. So we had to streamline that. So when we got into it, I would say we were mostly focused on Bitcoin, largely because it was dominant. But we looked at a whole bunch of other things, and we were looking for projects that solve that problem thesis that we laid out. So whether it be facilitating payments on cross-border settlements, whether it be smart contracts, we didn't do a lot of due diligence. We were basically betting on the marketing of the project. So there was one project called IOTA, um, and it was about putting crypto tokens on smart appliances and devices for exchanging micro data transactions. And that sounded cool to me. So we bought some of that. That was a train wreck. Um, Another one was Digibyte, which was single sign-on authentication, which was a problem that we solved. And if you could use some kind of blockchain authentication or whatever. And I said, again, we're not doing a lot of due diligence here. We looked at the paragraph on the abstract, looks good. Let's buy some at Digibyte. Another train wreck. Um, the ones that did okay for us because we bought so early were Ethereum. Ripple did okay. I mean, actually, Ripple didn't do well until this latest election, when it went up like 500% after the election. But I got out of that after that happened, and been mostly focused over the last year on a Bitcoin centric. I wouldn't say Bitcoin only, but a Bitcoin centric approach. So, and that's really, and also coming out of TradFi, I was attracted to Fred, who I happened to catch him on some of his first posts on YouTube or on X, where he was laying out the thesis for the ETF impact on the ecosystem. And that really appealed to me. And then I liked the whole fraternity that he set up over the course of the year. And so I just became that was great. That's how I met you. That's how I met most of the guys that I interact with on X. And so and by nature, I'm a very curious person. Want to study the next thing. I do believe in the Bitcoin centrism. Where my interest lies today, as we sit here in 25, is less on the other coins so much as it relates to what are the projects and what are the things that need to happen in the ecosystem to drive a further Bitcoin adoption into the economy. So it's the change management, it's the systems, political systems, it is the financial systems, regulatory, et cetera. Because I do think there's going to be money to be made around setting that up. So right now, I would say I'm really interested in studying what old TradFi products can be modified to include Bitcoin in the architecture. So things like securitized loans, things that's probably the most interesting one to me. How do we do that? But how do we do Bitcoin-backed reserves? How do we do escrow modeling? I know there's a whole bunch of things like that are very interesting. But I think you're going to see securitization and tokenization of assets, and this is where I think the new coins or as people will call them, shit coins, will come into it. It will be the tokenization of real world assets done by the firms like BlackRock. So while I don't necessarily endorse it, I want to understand it, because if there's money to be made, I'm certainly going to put a bet down, just like I did in 2017 on some of these other projects that didn't manifest out well. I would say on those other projects that are non-Bitcoin related, I probably I broke even on a nominal sense, but I lost the
Hey,
opportunity.
Thomas, I'm
Yeah,
just gonna jam in and cut it off because I think we're getting more and more people in here, and I think I was hoping like we just clear the air, which I think we did, because basically you're just saying, hey, these are your interests, and you'll pursue all these paths, which I respect, and I'm basically saying I think I didn't want it out in the ethos that I was actually calling your integrity into play with your interests, and
yeah.
just primarily. So I just wanted to make sure you're good and that there's no ill will there. So
Let me say
that's
one
what I
more
wanted to
thing.
clear up. And yeah,
Yeah,
go
let me
ahead.
say one more thing. I really appreciate where you and Justin are coming from, because I do think that this meme coin culture is undermining the Bitcoin ethos and adoption, because
Agreed.
and while it's all fun and games, it's a little out of hand. And what I mean by that is it damages uh, the broader public perception of this whole space, and that is not ideal for, as far as I'm concerned, for bringing Bitcoin into the in, into the economy. So in order for Bitcoin to really move to its full potential, we need to have the body politic, and that includes Congress and regulatory agencies and businesses, to accept Bitcoin as a legitimate issue. And when you see meme coins, which are cousins to Bitcoin, whether we like it or not, doing shit stuff, it undermines that. So in that sense, I don't like it.
Yeah, no, well said. Welcome, Cosmo, Macro. How are you guys doing this morning?
Hey, doing well. Can you hear me all right? I'm trying out using Spaces on my computer right
Oh
now.
yeah,
So,
sounds pretty good.
all right, I got my gaming headset on my
Ooh,
PC, so I I wasn't sure if I would come in clear or
move your mic back just a hair because we can hear when you blow into it a little bit. So other than that, you're good.
how about
Cosmo.
now?
Yeah, that's
Hey,
better. Yes.
hey,
Nicola.
oh yeah,
Hey,
hey,
Nicola. Hey, how are you?
good brother. Hey, I wanted to jump in right now just
Jump
to
on
say
in.
something. Well, I just wanted to say something that I think is um, in contrast to what Thomas was saying, um, and it's sort of based upon the principles of modern finance, which is by the way, I'm at the counter, just going to pay for something really quickly. Um, and the idea is that, efficient market theory and that markets that are liquid with good information flows move so quickly that unless you're um, a maven and you have some advantage, and by the way, there are thousands of institutional investors that are that line up to buy a security on the day that thousands of others are lining up to sell it because they think it's a little rich, and the other guys think it's a little a little cheap. So, what's fascinating to me as a Bitcoiner is that my journey violates everything that I studied in school, in finance, um, and so, and one of the outcomes for me in studying finance was to make me the opposite of what Thomas was saying, that he has this fundamental, like, intellectual curiosity towards technology, and I always felt that that leads him then, therefore, to like make individual bets, like individual security bets. And I always was the opposite. I always sort of bought into the idea that the markets were efficient, and therefore my ability to pick winners and losers was nil. And that's based upon 70 years of academic research. Uh, and However, with Bitcoin, it's such a paradigm shifting event that has upended this for me personally, but it has not upended it towards altcoins. Like, I think that market is akin to trying to pick stocks. And we all know, I think we all probably have heard of like how the Wall Street Journal would run these ongoing contests. And back when they printed the the daily stock prices, the journal writers would get a dartboard or a cork board, a cork wall, and they would pin the stock pages up on the wall, and they'd put a blindfold on, and they would throw darts at the wall, and they would pick a portfolio of stocks, and then they would compare their performance versus the best money managers, and I think over time the darts outperform the money managers, and the reason for this is because throwing darts at the wall incurs no transaction fees, management fees. You don't have to rent an office building. You don't have to hire a bunch of smart people to do research. And what this exercise does is it validates my lack of intellectual curiosity for trying to figure out the next, altcoin that's going to win. It's really not doable
Nicholas,
over time. Yeah, go ahead.
I really disagree with that. I think picking winning stocks is a lot easier than people make it out to be. It's definitely a lot easier than altcoins. I mean, you basically just have to think things through. Like, right? You have to think about what's going to happen in the future and where market share is.
Hey,
But
Asteroid,
altcoins are
we're
just
talking
random.
about we're trying to talk about Bitcoin and altcoins and not stocks. I think he was just using it as an example. So we're not really talking about stocks here.
Oh,
Keep
well,
going, Nicholas.
you brought up stocks.
No, he's
that's
using
okay.
it as an analogy for picking meme coins, basically, or
Oh yeah,
altcoins.
my point is
Just analogous.
that's completely random. Where stocks aren't really
Yeah, I
completely
really
random.
think that Thomas nailed it when he said it's really taking a lot of the time, effort, and energy away from Bitcoin. And it's also kind of a mockery because unfortunately now everything is still grouped under the umbrella of crypto, including Bitcoin, even though they couldn't be farther apart. So, having said that, it's I think that's where you're going, Nicola, with this, as Puppy would say, plane ride. And maybe just to land the plane a little bit for you, I think your point is you disagree with, spending a lot of your time, effort, and energy on pursuing these other projects. You might as well just throw darts at a dartboard if you're going to hit. I think maybe a lot of us can agree in this room that in the future, well, let me backtrack. Several years ago, I thought Bitcoin was just going to be the thing and take over the monetary system, blah, 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 blah. And then as I've progressed through my journey, I've realized that Bitcoin is going to end up being some sort of base layer, base money. And I think that there will be things on top of Bitcoin that, who knows at this point, because we're still early. It could be some fiats, could be some stable coins, some layer twos, some lightning liquid. Who knows what people will adopt? Hopefully, it's a decentralized, really secure platform that is similar to Bitcoin in a way. That's why Lightning is amazing. But there's issues with everything out there right now. Even though we tout Lightning as this incredible thing, there's actually issues with it. So I think it's
Yeah.
mindful. Yeah, yeah. You want to go ahead and finish? Sorry, I didn't mean to crash
Yeah,
land your
no,
plane, but
actually, I didn't mind being interrupted by asteroid, and I did want to land the plane. Um, I just want to differentiate though. Like I've listened to Thomas for about a year, and he's a really extraordinarily bright and accomplished human being. So um, I would suggest that Thomas's behavior towards the altcoin universe, and which, by the way, like the need for L2s, the need to build out infrastructure, the need to have lending platforms, things like this, the Lightning Network, better alternatives. These are all valid pursuits. I just think most people don't have Thomas's experience or track record or ability and talent to sort of suss all that out. And even Thomas, if he told the full story of his winners and losers, he's probably gotten creamed a bunch, and maybe he's made some good trades too. It's a very daunting undertaking that most people can't do. And
yeah, I
I'm
think.
done.
Uh, Thank you. That was great. I think one of the things is we have a tendency to blur these two worlds together, and unfortunately, we live in both worlds. So we have a foot in the traditional financial system where we get paid and we pay our bills and everything else. And so people like Thomas, people that actually trade, they're actually, that's their fiat job. So that's how they make an income. And I think sometimes they get chastised by the Bitcoin maximalist community because they're dabbling too much in the fiat world. So when we say make money, I think it's triggering for a lot of those people in the maxi world because, it's like, well, what is money? And, all these things come up. But I think we would actually be able to make faster and better leaps and bounds if we actually were a little bit more, well, less toxic, I guess maybe is a word, but actually able to look at our commonalities and pursue these things together because inevitably, I think Thomas has a good heart and he wants what's best for humanity long term. He's not malicious. He's not, egocentric and self centered and is just trying to fleece people or rug pull. So I think that's what I really appreciate about Thomas too. He's very honest. He's very political and diplomatic, and like you said, a very smart guy with a great track record. So, I would hate to, you know, uh, be a giant a-hole and lose that value to a group like this or to myself by just being a complete jerk just because I don't see eye to eye with him on what his interests are in altcoins or the potential there. So unfortunately, people do, and then they create these big divisive walls, which is not good in my estimation. So I think these are like minefields that we have to navigate very carefully. So with that, I will say good morning to
I
PFG.
appreciate all, hey, listen, I appreciate all the
Thomas,
kind words
yeah,
from you guys. And
yeah,
I would just say this, again, my pursuit of this whole space for the last, 9, 10 years is around that intellectual curiosity for the betterment of all. I think that's a fair assessment. That's what I do. I don't have any interests in things that I'm trying to sell to anybody. The things that I do are for corporate clients or for management consulting. It's nothing here. But when I go back to the beginning of my journey here, it was unclear that how this is all going to play out. It's much more clear today in 2025. And my paradigm is that Bitcoin was in a crypto community and in January of last year got promoted into a TradFi community. And what's happened as a result now, it still has its old cousins from the old fraternity, and they want to play in that space. But Bitcoin is really in a new space, in this TradFi space. And where I see tension with the Bitcoin community on this point is that the original Satoshi paper was about peer-to-peer cash exchange. And the promotion into TradFi was not for that. No, the TradFi is not trying to solve peer-to-peer. They're trying to solve store of value, and that's the promotion it got. So think of it like the fraternity metaphor is a good one. You had this fraternity, crypto was there, Bitcoin had all of its attributes, it was the top dog. But the new fraternity wants Bitcoin for something that maybe the old fraternity didn't know it for, which is this, it wants store of value. It's not interested in peer-to-peer. Now, eventually, now in this new fraternity, new projects and new things are going to happen. And eventually, I think this layer two and other things are going to make Bitcoin, as you mentioned, Lauren. I agree with that thesis. It is going to be foundational, but it's not going to be the only thing. Like I don't think things like Lightning are going to scale to the masses, but I do think Bitcoin will be foundational to what's happening. So my interest is exploring all these things, and I like to listen to. I don't like to exclude anybody, and you know, I would just say this. I know that I'll land the plane here. I'm very sad that the Bitcoin first thing devolved into what happened.
Agreed.
You know, and I don't like the fact that that happened. We had a very good fraternity. There was tension there for sure, but and you know, at some level, the thing that I'm upset with Fred about is that as the leader of that, the titular head of that, he didn't appreciate the things that he did and how it would affect that fraternity and how it would affect others. So in his pursuit of intellectual stuff, he's sitting there in the office and doing stuff. He did not think through the impact of how it affected the other people in the fraternity that he created. And
Yeah.
now it's fucked, right?
Yep.
So,
Thomas, I think before we switch over to Cosmo, I will reply to that. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there. I think Pubby would be proud today because we're using all of his euphemisms with the whole land the plane and whatnot. No, I think a huge differentiating factor between you and somebody like Fred is I don't know if integrity is the word, but the intentions of the heart. You actually are caring about others, and I think intentions from folks like Fred are more egocentric, where it's what can I gain, and to do it at the expense of others, I think is a huge red flag, and I think that was extremely damaging, like you said, to a group of people that really were thinking, hey, this guy is, more, he wasn't maybe a Bitcoin maximalist, but he was more Bitcoin centric. And I think even that's why I take shots sometimes because I'm really still a little pissed and hurt because he hasn't even reached out to me. And he didn't owe me anything and whatever. We were arm's distance friends, but still, it's like doubling down on being stupid is just double stupid. It doesn't make anything better. It just makes it worse. And I don't give a crap about I care more about quality of people than quantity of followers. Like it's like I don't care if you gained all these followers or whatever else and peddling this book and doing all this other stuff. To me, that just shows your intentions, and I think your intentions are pure and good, and those intentions like that are more damaging and destructive and egocentric. And I think that the ethos of Bitcoin is decentralization, the good of everybody, and I think that that's where I want to align my core belief system, and that's what I think I do, and I want my intentions to be fueled by that, which is basically love. So I think that's a differentiating factor right there, and that's why I still struggle. Anyway, I'll get off the podium now and hand it over to Cosmo.
Yeah, good morning, guys. I
Morning.
guess it's a little off topic now because we kind of moved on from it, but Thomas was talking about fraternities, and I think that that's an interesting topic, especially because we talk about like the classes of Bitcoin, what year you got in, and I think that with each cycle, there is a much different group of people that find Bitcoin for one reason or another. And to the point about Satoshi's white paper, I think it's interesting because he did issue it as a peer-to-peer cash system, but on the Genesis block, he did mint that headline from the bailing out, the second bailing out of the banks from the chancellor and things like that. So I think to an extent, he did kind of see it as a peer-to-peer cash thing, but the purpose of it was to have a money outside of the traditional banking system. And so, or I guess like the fiat system. So I think that it's hard to kind of interpret exactly what Satoshi was planning on doing or what he wanted to do, because I think he understood a lot of the aspects of Bitcoin more than people think. But yeah, I think that as Bitcoin evolves, you're going to have people who think Bitcoin is one thing. You're going to have another group who thinks Bitcoin is another, and it's interesting to see how they all start working together. And it seems that each class is kind of a they think that their way of looking at Bitcoin is superior, and it's like, yeah, this is what it is, and this is what it isn't, and it's interesting to kind of see these fraternities collide.
PSG. Looks like Fred might come in or maybe in here already. I don't know. Fred, if you're in here and you want to talk, come on up. PSG, how are you? Good morning. Are you still freezing your butt off up there? And are you feeling better today?
Yeah, dude, I feel a little bit better. It is very, very cold. It is minus 30 degrees Celsius. And yeah, it's supposed to be the
I don't
coldest
miss
day of the
that.
year. So yeah, I can see that. I just want to weigh in a little bit on the crypto v Bitcoin piece and hopefully try to lend a bit of perspective there. Somebody made a great distinction yesterday between Bitcoiners who know better and people who are just kind of on their journey. And it's important to know which side of that we fall off of when we talk about, crypto versus Bitcoin. So I'm every bit 100% Bitcoin maxi, but I have a little bit of a softened view on everything crypto, and that's because to the degree that people don't know better and they're just figuring the space out, or it's often that bright shiny thing that attracts them in the shit coinery or the outsized gains or the bro speak about crypto is often the advertisement or the bright shiny object that gets people to pay attention. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I think we have to value the journey to a degree, right? If you have somebody who's 200 pounds overweight and you waved a wand and made them be in perfect shape in a moment, it would be no habits had changed, nothing would have been learned. It's still the same human being that got themselves into a bad spot, and they would likely not stay in shape. And I think the journey's a bit like that. You have to do the work. And I think sometimes we forget that just because Bitcoin is perfect, the humans interacting with it are not. And so the weak link in the chain is always the person on the endeavor, and that person has to go through a bit of a process. So we know Bitcoin wins in the end. So I'm not terribly threatened by all the craziness that goes on in the meme coin world or the shitcoin world as a whole. But I think people acting in good faith will eventually get there. Bitcoin obviously wins in the end, but we can't discount how flawed we are as people trying to engage with it and interact with it. And whether that's just ignorance or, frankly, stupidity, not everybody has the engagement level or even the intelligence level, frankly, to engage with it immediately. So it just takes time. There's a process involved, and it's like survival of the fittest. And we know Bitcoin's there in the end, so it doesn't stress me as much. And then to the point also that it distracts from Bitcoin or takes some of the attention off of it, the time, effort, and energy. I totally agree that is the case. It can be a distraction, but it's also going to sift through the people who are willing to do the work. And the reason that can still exist exists and the meme coin exists is because it's targeting a group of people that are simply not going to do the work. And so they can get rugged and then they can decide if they want to pursue something sound and hard for the rest of their life and for their progeny, or if they're just going to continue to be lazy.
Sorry, I was responding. I sent Fred an invite because he said he was going to drop in here, so I invited him to speak. I think that was well said. One of my best friends in the space, and also somebody who um, I was referring to when I was talking about, hey, guess what? We live in a fiat world. This guy has to deal with just fiat all day long. That's his job, is money, as in good old Canadian dollars. So it's wonderful that somebody that is just steeped in TradFi is awake to what's going on in the big picture and is able to. It seems he's probably still covertly doing it because there's still TradFi. I don't know what's going on in Canada as much, but it's just waking up to this stuff and going like, oh crap, there's some problems in the system. So I love what he's doing in TradFi and working with the tools that he has, which is another reason that MicroStrategy is one of my favorite altcoins. But no, he's doing a wonderful job in TradFi and a money manager and whatnot. It'd be a tough gig. Hats off to you, man. Really appreciate you and appreciate your friendship as well.
Yeah, buddy, I appreciate you too. And I appreciate everybody in the spaces. I appreciate the forum and the opportunity to have conversations with good people, even to disagree with good people. Just look at it as a game of elimination. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Beast Games. It's this new thing going on Prime. You guys are maybe way ahead of me, but basically, Mr. Beast grabs 1,000 people and just plays a series of games with them until there's only one person left standing. To me, that's a pretty good picture of Bitcoin. You can throw everything out there, but it's still standing in the end. And I think there's value in human beings having to go through that process. So for
Yes,
those of us that are already there, man, we got to find a way to help people along and be gracious. But there's a Bible verse that says, "Don't cast your pearls before swine." So I think it's a little crazy to keep throwing Bitcoin wisdom at people who are not willing to engage or can't even think about these things. You know, expecting the pig to make a pearl necklace out of it, it's just not going to happen. So we got to focus our energy and time and effort into loving each other, growing the space, and making the light brighter so that people are attracted to it.
I love that. It's funny you're talking about the Beast Games. I did watch some episodes of that, and I totally thought of the same things where it's some of the scenarios where were like, for what price would you basically betray your tribe? You know, and it was when I was watching it, it was really hitting around the same time as all this crap we were talking about with Thomas, and it was like bribery too, because the price would go up and would go up and up, and I was just thinking like, man, you know, we're all just human, and it's like, hey, you know, that house on the beach sounds pretty good, and that, you know, new Lambo, and because really, this is very synonymous with what's going on in, you know, some of altland and whatnot, where, you know, the allure of that quick gain, you're really just thinking about yourself and not thinking about the greater good, the good of everybody. And I think that was, you know, the whole Beast Games thing was is really kind of cool. I love psychology in general, so I really like studying human behavior and why people tick and why they do what they do. So I've been intrigued by the whole Beast Games things, which is kind of dumb, but still I'm enjoying it. So it's funny you brought that up.
Yeah, it's a case study in human behavior, and if you
100%.
yeah, if people haven't seen it, go check out Beast Games. It's on Prime. I'm not affiliated, and it's pretty cringe. I'll warn you
Whatever,
guys.
you're getting a cut, aren't you? Yeah, you.
Yeah. No, actually, I sat there and for about 10 minutes an episode, I was entertained, and about 35 minutes an episode, I was super pissed off. And the reason I was pissed off was because I didn't want to believe that there was such a big dispersion or such a big spread in the way that human beings would interact with the same information. And the people willing to sacrifice, for the greater good. And then there's the people that will just completely go down with the ship. Their attitudes like, if I go down, we all go down. And there's just all these humans in between those two extremes. I think is a really good thing to sit and think about with this whole Bitcoin shitcoin discussion.
Sorry.
I was going to say, is anyone talking right now? If not, I
Oh
can't
no,
hear
go,
you.
go ahead. Sorry, we'll yield the floor. Macro.
Yeah, no, just curious. Figured maybe we shift gears, start talking some Bitcoin stuff.
Sounds amazing.
I
Wonderful
know you.
idea.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, this is something that is seemingly always trending now, and there was a tweet earlier where Sailor said big strategy day with the Bitcoin B. And they've been doing some interesting stuff, exploring new like financing options, things like that. Um, kind of curious to see what you guys think about A, what could be in the works, and then B, if you think it'll just be kind of another nothing burger. I've been sharing that meme with Cosmo a lot recently, the "fell for it again" post that I shared in our group chat. So I'm curious if you guys think it's going to be another one of those kind of moments, where somebody hypes up something that's really not all that interesting. So, anyways, I'll pause there and just see what you guys think, because typically when Sailor tweets something, he does tend to follow up with at least some sort of announcement that's actually tangible in relationship to MicroStrategy. I doubt it'll be anything large like strategic reserve type stuff. I think I'm in more of the Joe camp there, that we probably don't hear anything until later this year after that working group is done. But anyways,
Yeah, I think there are a lot of exciting things happening in the space for sure. And I think the problem is there's a lot of people capitalizing on it on Twitter. So like they'll, repost the same thing. Like I saw there's a couple of pages that were like, "Oh, is Sailor going to announce the strategic Bitcoin reserve?" And it's like, "No, dude, that's not what's happening." And so I think that although there is a lot
completely
of things to
agree.
be yeah, there's a lot of like awesome things to be excited about, but I think that people really monopolize that, and I'm done falling for it. Macro and I have a joke that I just fall for all of this. All the announcements I've fallen for the last half of last year, and I'm getting a harder shell now. So
He's a our lovable, gullible astronaut. So
yep,
yeah, you're just
not anymore, dude. I'm changing my ways. I'm not as gullible anymore.
Cosmo does not maintain his space cadet status in 2025. Is that where we're going with that?
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think, Lauren, Thomas? Do y'all have any opinions? Like, I know, he's always trying to do new fancy financing things, or his recent, I guess, meme would be using volatility or capturing volatility to try to expand their Bitcoin position. Um, I kind of fight with myself on this, where I'm like, on one hand, okay, eventually people are not going to be that interested anymore in the things he's offering. But then on the other hand, I'm like, well, compared to the size of some of these markets, MicroStrategy is still pretty small. So it could still be a pretty continued just buy side pressure. I don't know. Like, what do you guys think?
Sorry, I was responding to Fred. Yeah, I missed the question because I'm trying not to be triggered. Yeah,
No, you're good, dude. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, with that, I think would consider myself to be fairly unbiased, because I just never really got up on those spaces too much. I think I memed at him a little too hard early, so I just didn't get allowed on stage all that often. Um, so I wasn't really all that offended or surprised by anything. I always had a bit of a, I don't know, call it a weird feeling. Anytime you're around, I guess, long enough, you kind of can sniff out just I'm trying to be nice here. You can sniff you can sniff out BS pretty quickly. And Cosmo and I had conversations, gosh, probably going back a year ago now, where he was just like, I don't know, dude, something's up with that guy. I don't trust him. And I was like, yeah, I
hey,
can't put my finger on it either,
hey,
but I feel the
macro.
same
I didn't
way.
mean to switch
So,
the topic back, by the way. I just
oh, you're good.
I got it. His reply to my thing popped in, and then he said he was going to come into the space, but instead he created a space with the same title, which I don't really care. But it just, I mean, I'm not surprised, because one thing that he has
Yeah.
observed with his behavior is he'll say one thing and do another. So it's not a big deal. It's just it was a little frustrating. But yeah, no,
No,
switch it
and
back to Bitcoin, man, because we're not here to talk about
I will.
some
I just wanted
nonsense.
to. It's more of a PSA, not directed at him directly, but just for anybody in general. The longer you stick around in the Bitcoin space, the more and more grifters you'll see that will come and
Yeah,
go of various types, right? And this is just a broad statement. And so, like I said, I've seen so many, like, I was around in, like, the BitConnect days, and like there's always something new that somebody's pushing. And that's why I think a lot of maxis get pretty toxic pretty quick when somebody comes and starts talking about some new way to um, try to, quote, make money. And it's why so many of us will just say, no, that's stupid. You're going to lose Bitcoin that way. Just stack sats, hold them in cold storage, and ignore everything else around you, because it's the only surefire way to make sure you don't get scammed. And I think that that's kind of the best way to segue into a new topic is just there's a lot of people, and I think people who are from a TradFi background who do trade tend to get maybe drawn towards these kind of fancier possibilities than somebody like myself. I'm just a systems person, so if I find a system that I feel is working for me, I'm perfectly fine just sticking with that and not trying to get fancy. And I think that, I'm not saying that my way is the only way. I just know that anytime I tried to get fancy in the past, I got wrecked for it. And I think that that's the most likely outcome is anytime somebody's trying to get fancy and trade in and out of anything, you're effectively just reducing the amount of Bitcoin you're going to have in the future. And I really strongly believe that. And I've seen so many people come in and try to do fancy stuff and just get utterly wrecked, or at least just break even, which in Bitcoin terms
Yeah,
means they're still getting wrecked, right? Because if you break even
right.
in dollar terms,
Yeah.
you're still losing. So,
No, I
anyways.
totally agree. I never write things down, but I actually wrote it. Well, I did yesterday too. But anyway, some of the things I was curious about were, I know we haven't really heard a lot, or I haven't, about the mempool actually clearing, which is kind of crazy. Then we actually were listening in, thanks to Terence. Hey, Terence, to the Crypto Czar announcement yesterday, but I think we missed the exciting, crumb in there, which is the words were actually uttered for the first time by anyone in government, I believe. Um, and then centralized mining pools have always been kind of a red flag to me. So those are kind of topics that I wouldn't mind actually hashing out today because, let's talk about Bitcoin for a change instead of everything else. So
Oh,
I don't know
I'm so down for any of those topics, man. I
what
think
were you guys' thoughts about the whole cryptos are actually with the words he said when it actually, I mean, has those words come out of any government official's mouth before? Actually, the whole Bitcoin reserve. I mean, thoughts.
yeah, I mean, for me on this one, I feel like there are definitely some people who have gotten a bit of like a savior complex when it comes to the current administration, which is kind of weird to me. It's like people still need to have an adversarial mindset, I think. I think that's the only way that we maintain a fairly robust community. And if people are waiting on the edge of their seat to see whether or not the strategic reserve will be announced tomorrow just to pump their bags, then I think you're kind of missing the plot. But at the same time, the dude owns a lot of Bitcoin and owns companies that do stuff with Bitcoin. So for people to say that, oh, well, because the strategic reserve and its exact structure was not announced week one, that it somehow means that it's bearish for Bitcoin. I think that's also weird. So it's kind of like a two things are true at once for me. It's like, don't wait for the government to save you, but also everybody in this administration, it seems, owns some Bitcoin. So it's like to think that there's not going to be positive price action or moving in the direction of being more friendly towards the space, definitely than what the alternative would have been. I think you're also kind of delusional. So
Yeah.
it's kind of that's where I'm trying to stay balanced in my views on
Yeah.
things.
Agreed. That's smart. I think. I think Joe had some good points too, where he's looking at things uh, from a legal perspective oftentimes, and so he's saying like, hey guys, this is regarding the first announcement, which was like, hey, we're going to study this thing and we'll, bring our whatever back in June or July or whatever. So thinking that anything would happen before then, I think was wishful thinking. And, I don't even want to sound like one of these people that's pro or con this whole reserve thing because I'm more of the camp that Bitcoin doesn't care about a lot of this stuff and that the only thing that would really impact maybe things like how fast adoption occurs or, stuff like that. So I love it because it has to do with Bitcoin. And so I'm going to sit here and watch it and eat my popcorn, but I don't want to get too animated one way or the other. So it's super fun to watch, but don't really give a crap, and neither does Bitcoin. Or I probably should say that the other way around. But Peg's here. Terrence, good morning, sir. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that. Peg, you're off mute. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay. Hey, yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to put things in perspective, zoom out a little bit. Lutnick only got approved this morning. I can't imagine them going forward without his input. I don't even think he'd be okay with that. because he's been really central. And anybody who saw him speak in Nashville knows that he's a linchpin for us. And I think that this administration is going to do things legally and by the book as far as transforming our whole economic system. So I think we've needed to be more patient. I'm really frustrated with the number of comments I've seen that are like, oh, nothing burgers, more nothing burgers, another nothing burger. Anybody who was suddenly propelled into this space from even 2023 or even from Nashville to right now would not believe what's happening, that we're talking, that members of the president's cabinet are Bitcoiners, are pro-Bitcoin. The vice president is a Bitcoiner. And we have I don't like the word either. I'm going to say we have a Bitcoin czar. This is unbelievable. And we are exactly where we need to be. And in the meantime, if people are impatient or if people think things are nothing burgers, I want to remind you that Bitcoin doesn't care.
Yeah, great. Peg, it's good to hear your voice. It's been a while. Are you still getting signatures on the sign, by the way?
I am, yep.
Nice, very good. My signature
Yeah.
is on that sign. It feels like you were scolding me because I
Oh,
have
not
been
you
one of.
personally.
No, I've been one of those guys.
Listen,
I
it's
was
been
given
everywhere. It's been
yeah, no, it's
everywhere. The only person that I think has really projected great perspective is one of our champions in this space, the always hilarious Tyler S. He is a riot, and he always reminds people we're exactly where we're supposed to be right now. But definitely,
yeah,
I didn't see any kind of BSR going forward without Lutnick. On top of everything else, that guy is a good person. And he went through every kind of worst nightmare with Cantor Fitzgerald on 9/11, and he's taking care of all those families for
yeah.
two generations going forward. He's going to take care of all those families and all those children. And I'm right now standing at my window looking at the skyline of Lower Manhattan. And I'm glad there's guys like that that are going to help us figure out our way out of this mess that we're in, this $38 trillion debt. One of my sons came to me the other day and he said, I have never experienced it before in my life that there was a president that really stood for his branch of office, that is the executive, a guy who made executive decisions, who makes things happen. My son, who's 20, said, all the presidents in my lifetime have been these people who've always said, I can't accomplish anything. I can't accomplish anything because of Congress. And so nothing has gotten done. For 20 years now, my son's entire lifetime, that's been his experience of presidents. You're an executive, you're in the executive branch, you're supposed to make executive decisions and then make stuff happen. And it's been a long time since that's been happening. So I know that even the generation coming up, those that have their heads screwed on straight, um, they are glad to see it.
Yeah, I'll prompt Terrence after I do my little reply to that. But Terrence gave some thumbs up and down, so I was curious to hear you. But I'll throw an interjection here before I hand it over to you. Totally agree. It's kind of crazy thinking about what you just said, Peg, and that 5 years ago, we did talk about this stuff in Bitcoin circles, but it was just game theory. And it was really hard to wrap your head around at that time. Like, wow, that's actually going to happen. And now that it is, it's nutso. And I think maybe instead, oftentimes we think we're like more apart than we actually are. We're just a little peon. We're just a little pawn in this whole thing. And I'm not saying don't do anything and don't get emotional, but I think we also have to keep that in check and not get too crazy and not um back then also it's not like we were anti-government, but we were very careful of like, hey, You know, we want, well, I don't know. I think there's a lot of disagreement even within Bitcoin circles on, how much government is relevant. I know there's some people who are like completely anti-government, and some are like, who's gonna build the roads and all this jazz. So just want to point that out, to just be mindful of how much we get sucked back into thinking that politics are going to save us, and that and rallying around a human is going to, do us all this wonderful things. And I'm not trying to be anti anything. I'm just saying, hey, let's be mindful, let's be careful, let's watch this whole thing go down. And yes, we all have a vested interest in it because it's all of us. And I don't mean just Bitcoin community, I mean humanity in general. And we've definitely gone off the rails with a lot of these systems, including politics. And, history has shown that voting harder doesn't fix things. So just being mindful of all of that, and love what you said, Peg. Terrence, you gave some thumbs down there. Thoughts?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I gave thumbs up and thumbs downs, but the thumbs down was not what Peg was saying in general. It was just one comment, because I do agree with what she's saying and what you're saying, Lauren. It's like we do have to zoom out. We have to remind ourselves that Bitcoin doesn't care. Bitcoin doesn't need governments. The governments do need Bitcoin, though, and I do support them going after that. You want, as an American, and I love America, you don't want to lose dollar dominance for the power it gives us, but at the same time, we know the dollar has been the ills of us and most of the world. So it's sort of conflicting to be like, well, let's support the dollar, let's support our dominance as the reserve currency, but at the same time, wouldn't it be better to have, at least as a reserve asset for trade, wouldn't it be better to have a neutral, public and fair, auditable and transparent um, token? I mean, we've been using gold. That has really been our reserve asset, but it just isn't transparent. We just don't know. And it's like, why not make that more efficient? Why not innovate and use Bitcoin? My thumbs down was mostly just at calling our government or Trump or David Sachs or any of them Bitcoiners. Let's just be honest. They're not Bitcoiners. They hold Bitcoin. They might understand Bitcoin as a trade, but they're still just very fiat minded. If they were Bitcoiners, they wouldn't be playing in crypto, just full stop. But yeah, when we zoom out, Peg, you're absolutely right. It's like we've come so far, and I think we need to sort of humble ourselves and remind ourselves just how far we've come, because it's like Bitcoin is now being discussed. The conversation is open in sort of all the corners of the world, large and small. And, I remember back to a time when it was like, oh my God, Walmart might be accepting Bitcoin, online on their website somewhere. Or this person, this celebrity who we all know, or this sports star might, take a paycheck in Bitcoin. And, Twitter Bitcoin would go nuts. Like that was the big announcement. And the problem is the nothing burger of it all. And I did call yesterday's event a big nothing burger. The nothing burger of it all is just that I think we're just getting fatigued of the announcements of the announcements of the announcements. But we do need to realize, and especially with government and how much has happened already so fast in 15 days with the Trump administration, and how much they have to dismantle and clean up, that this is going to take time. There are going to be baby steps, and they are playing a game of politics and game theory that are way above what many of us are thinking in this space, because it is literally politics. And like you just pointed out, Peg, Lutnick hasn't even come in yet, and he might be one of the biggest Bitcoiners of all of them. So we do need to be patient. I do think we are going to see Bitcoin in a sovereign wealth fund, but there's also going to be a lot of other things just by definition of what a sovereign wealth fund is, right? It has to be a diversified portfolio. That's just what it has to be by definition. It's going to have a ton of stuff, as it should. Will we get a strategic Bitcoin reserve, or some form of that? I do think we will, but that may not happen until the end of this year. I don't know. And maybe the nothing burger feeling from us is just that, we were in Nashville. We did see Trump stand on the stage and say on day one, this, and that. But, we know he says a lot of things. He ultimately does a lot of things he says, but we don't know what other friction he's going up against. And you see what Elon is doing with Doge, and so much cleanup and deregulation and cutting off payments and closing down departments. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. If we were to announce today a strategic Bitcoin reserve or something similar, it would just be too much. The left would explode, and we might even have a civil war. I don't know. So yeah, we just need to be patient. We need to be supportive. We just need to continue educating the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. Um, Also, if this doesn't derail, I wanted to go back to what Macro brought up something that no one really jumped on, and they were saying, "What is Saylor gonna be bringing up today?" And I'm not a MicroStrategy. I always say MacroStrategy because MacroStrategy is the company that technically owns Bitcoin. MicroStrategy doesn't own any, actually. It's their subsidiary, MacroStrategy LLC. So I accidentally always say that. But um, I think it's gonna be, I mean, look, I would love if I think it's too early, but I would love it if he came up with Bitcoin-backed loans. I think that's where he's going to go. I think he wants to turn MicroStrategy into a bank, into like a full financial services company. That's just my gut and, from what I've been reading. But it's probably gonna just be another buy or maybe a way for institutions to get dividends. He knows most of the fiat world, they just still want cash flow. They still want, some kinda yield, and because he can generate yield with what he's doing, maybe he's got some other version of that, or maybe some partnership, maybe some huge partnership where one of these large companies that doesn't feel comfortable holding Bitcoin has somehow become a large shareholder of MicroStrategy. I don't know. That's my
I
uninformed
have
guesses.
I have one question for you, Terence. Where does one get the Bitcoin to do Bitcoin-backed loans if one does not own any Bitcoin?
What do you mean if MicroStrategy doesn't own any?
Yeah. So, like, I'm just curious how that structure would look like, to do it in a way that wouldn't lead to some level of rehypothecation if you're not actually holding it in cold storage yourself and setting it up so that, say, I don't know, in my super simple example, someone wants a Bitcoin backed loan that's backed with 5 Bitcoin, and you don't have a specific wallet that has that 5 Bitcoin in it that is not being promised to something else. It just feels to me like the structures of those could be gamed in a way that leads to fragility in whatever loan backing system gets set up if it's all held in one mega wallet on Coinbase. Does that make
A
sense?
100%. Yeah, because those kinds of lending products do exist right now. Some of those platforms are already there at the 14 to 16%. The ones that are coming down that are lower, and the ones that I believe will be even lower than traditional fiat loans, are the ones that will have proof of reserves, multi-sig, where escrow is one of the three keys. And maybe he's going to offer some kind of product like that because um, there's no reason that MicroStrategy can't start to shift their custody models and start moving some more of it into some kind of self-custody or a multi-sig system. Like, and maybe that could be part of the announcement. But yes, you're 100% right, Macro. That's what it has to be. You have to know that your Bitcoin is there, doesn't move. Clearly, the lender has to have one of the keys. And with an intermediary, some like law firm, regulated law firm that holds one key, should there be disagreement, they could sign because you're a bad actor, or you don't pay, or you don't, or there's a margin call. They have to be able to take the Bitcoin. Obviously, if I were lending out fiat and holding your Bitcoin, I want to take your Bitcoin if you're not going to pay me back. That's only fair and standard. So yeah, something like that will change the landscape dramatically. And I'm sure Saylor knows because he's kind of doing it with MicroStrategy that Bitcoiners are craving Bitcoin-backed loans. They're seeing where we're going. They know they're all saving for a reason, but they don't want to have to spend their Bitcoin. They don't want to pay capital gains taxes, or even if you pay capital gains taxes, just never get back your Bitcoin. So it
Yeah,
would
and I'm
be
definitely interested in Bitcoin backed loans personally. Like, I do think it's definitely something that, if done correctly, and I don't claim to know exactly what correctly looks like, but once again, hypothetically, if done correctly, could unlock the ability for Bitcoiners to upgrade their lives for being patient hodlers for the past who knows how long, 5, 10, whatever years, or longer in the future. I just think that it's got to be done in a way that doesn't lead to a BlockFi Celsius type scenario where there's a bunch of rehypothecation going on, or an FTX scenario where there's a bunch of people saying, yeah, you've got Bitcoin backed loans. Bitcoin backed loans are great. And then there's actually no Bitcoin there doing any backing, because that's like what happened with FTX, for example. This was not a Bitcoin backed loan thing. It was just oh, yes, you've got this wallet on a screen that says you're holding Bitcoin, but in reality, they don't actually hold any at all. And
Yeah,
so I
it's
just
got
think
to
it's
be it's got to be no rehypothecation. It's got to be 100% proof of reserves in an address. You can see the Bitcoin. And if you think about why Michael Saylor has been so successful with MicroStrategy, because he tapped into the world of fixed income where people are happy with fixed incomes. And so it's like those are the perfect types of investors for MicroStrategy that can fund Bitcoin backed loans. Because why would why would you be happy with a bond or a loan, let's say at 5, 6, 7, 8%, where there's risk because there's of the collateral. But now you've got perfect collateral. You've got perfect verifiable, you know, fungible collateral that, who cares? I don't even care who the applicant is. I don't care if they have assets. I don't care what their income is. Unlike a home where a mortgage is really just a loan on your future income. It's like, well, this is just a loan on your Bitcoin. And here it is sitting here. And with the turn of a key, I take it. So I just feel like that's the future. And that's the next big step. I don't think that's where MicroStrategy goes today, but that would be amazing.
Hey, what was up with Jack Dorsey posting something about Michael Saylor, and then he zipped up into an XRP coin or some crazy thing? Did anybody see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
What was the deal with that anyway?
Can
I
you
don't
share
know.
that in the nest? I
Yeah,
haven't seen that.
it's a video. Michael Saylor's in like this Iron Man suit with like a Bitcoin symbol
Right.
on it.
Yeah.
And then he jumps up and he transforms into just an XRP coin. I'll find it and throw it up.
So is he
Thomas,
implying that Sailor is like an XRP bro or
that's
something,
what I
or
was
he's
trying to
gonna?
figure out. I
I
was
think
trying
he's
to figure out
implying
what
that
the
Saylor is opening up more to crypto in general, just some of his wording, which I think just has more to do with the position he's sitting in and attracting more people into the space, as opposed to some of us autistic, toxic people. That's what I'm
I don't
guessing.
know. He seemed to be pretty respectful of the autistic people early on. I mean, he did kind of coin the cyber hornet term. So I'm hoping that he doesn't go full shit coin. But I know this: at any point, if he announces he's doing anything with a non-Bitcoin asset, I'm out. I've been holding some MicroStrategy for a long time, just kind of in solidarity / support. But if he
macro. I think
says,
that would be unanimous with a ton of Bitcoiners. I think
yeah,
that would not be a wise idea for the share price for sure.
I mean, I don't hold a bunch of MicroStrategy. Like my sell isn't gonna be any drastic, tanking of their stock. But I've been holding it since it was under $100. So, I would feel a bit betrayed if he started doing shitcoinery. But anyways, Thomas has had his hand up, so I'll shut up and toss it
Yes.
over to him.
How's the Solana roundtable? Actually, it's a Bitcoin today Solana version, I guess, Thomas.
How is Thomas in both spaces at the same
He
time?
has
That's
two
what I want to
phones,
know.
man, or a laptop and a
I have
multiple.
multiple platforms going, so they're not talking about Solana, but
It's a miracle.
the thing that I was relating to, people talking about the Bitcoin loans. I did a decent amount of research and work on that, and it's something that I would encourage people to really study up on before these products emerge as mainstream. I think there's this mantra within the Bitcoin community is to buy and never sell, and I understand what that means, but I don't think it's literal. I think it's probably buy and never sell into another asset, but that doesn't mean you can't spend it, which is spend and sell are two different words. So when you spend the Bitcoin, the issue then becomes, are you better off liquidating at the edge? So say you have a stack and you liquidate enough to cover a life event. It could maybe your expenses. It could be a second house, a wedding, whatever it might be, life. So the alternative is to borrow against your stack, and you have to then come up with the proper amount of collateral. in the nest, I put a spreadsheet that's like a Google spreadsheet. You can go download it and then modify it and play around with yourself. But you can really run some very interesting scenarios. And I would encourage people to think it through before this happens within the next 12 months. And what I mean by that is you don't want to get called into what I would call, what I think is going to emerge are predatory loans. And what I mean by that is the financial institutions are going to get their hands on your posted collateral. So you post, let's just say you post 5 Bitcoin and you take a mortgage for use it for a Bitcoin backed mortgage. If your loan to value ratios get out of whack, you can get cleared out and lose your Bitcoin, which was never your intent. So I would ask people just to study it, because I think Bitcoin really offers the possibility that you could live off of a small, what I would think is a relatively small stack for people who've been in the business for a while. Say anywhere from 5 to 10 Bitcoin, you could have a nice lifestyle living off of that if we go one more leg up. So right now we're sitting at 100,000. Let's say at 250, this hits 250,000. Then I think really you're off to the races around maybe living off of that stack. But the thing I would caution people, because I've run all kinds of scenarios on this, you've got to keep the loan to value very low. You cannot. There are loan products out there that will let you go up to 65 loan to value, 65%. I would never do that. Not while the volatility is what it is. I would keep it under 25%, and then you really have very low liquidation risk. You do introduce third-party counterparty risk by posting your collateral somewhere. So you got to be careful who you do it with. So I would wait till the major institutions are offering this, whether it be a Fidelity, a Schwab, or a BlackRock, or somebody who, as a counterparty, is not going to FTX you or Celsius you. I mean, they're going to have plenty of capital to make sure that you don't lose your collateral back. So it's a very interesting thing. I would encourage people to study on it, and I think it'll be really good for Bitcoiners. It could really change your life. And the last point I'll just make is, I think the more you study it, the more you realize you may be able to change your life faster than you think. If you're thinking that, I'm going to work for another 10 years, well, maybe you only have to work for 2 more years. You have, everyone's situation is different. You got to study it. But to me, it's the most exciting development that's going to come is these Bitcoin loans. But I just would caution people to be careful and be knowledgeable so that you don't become a victim when the predatory loans come out.
What's the 7.9 Bitcoin? Thomas Saylor somewhere said 7.9 Bitcoin makes you a maxi.
I think so. That was from the Nashville presentation. That's why I put that in there. It's just you can plug in whatever you want. I would download it, make a copy of it. If you want me to make modifications to it, I have other models that I've built. I just didn't put them out on the Google Sheets. I'm happy to, if people want to just send me a note and say, hey, could you make this modification? You could do that. And what I modeled was a reverse mortgage protocol where your interest payments roll into the loan, and you never have any outbound cash flow. That's fantastic, right? So you don't have to manage your cash flow. You just take a draw. Now, again, the thesis here is that you're going to have CAGRs on Bitcoin well in excess of 30%. If you do that, then it's easy to take out 1% a month of your stack. If you think it's going to go higher than that, you could take out 2%. But you got to track the loan to value. And I would, if I were ever invoking this protocol, I would make sure that I have enough side capital, meaning capital outside of this program, to suspend my withdrawals during a bear market. How long will a bear market last? Maybe 12 to 18 months at the max. So you want to be able to have enough capital to not rely on that to buy your groceries.
Thomas, sorry to interrupt, but could you turn Fred down in the background, please? I think being in that other space is just really distracting.
Sorry. I got rid of it. So,
does that take into account capital gains as well, Thomas, or it's just clean numbers for now?
It's clean numbers right now because, as I understand it, a loan is not taxable, right? You're borrowing and then you're paying it off. So in a reverse mortgage, you'd be rolling the loans.
Yeah, no, I just mean if you're living on the Bitcoin, you might be spending it, which you'd have to pay capital gains. But yeah.
Well, you're not really. You're taking a loan and you're spending the loan proceeds, and then you have to pay back that loan. Where the taxable event comes is when you settle the loan in total. So I don't. You'd have to talk to a tax professional on how rolling loans are taxable. But yeah, eventually you'd have to pay the tax. There's no way around the tax man. But this really is an alternative to selling your Bitcoin at the edge. So just imagine you have 10 Bitcoin, and it's up to the 250,000 that I'm talking about. So what is that? That's 2.5 million. And you need $50,000 to do something. I could sell $50,000 worth, pay the capital gains, but then I have to sell. Okay, we have to sell 75,000 worth to do that. Now I take a loan, and I just defer that payment, and what that does is it allows for the Bitcoin that I was going to sell to raise the money to appreciate, and I just pay later. So, and it really gets to this issue of a paradigm. Like I'm looking to buy a truck, right? I want to buy a new truck this year, and so the truck is like $80,000. And then I say, if I use Bitcoin conceptually, am I paying $250,000 for this truck effectively? Because I'm paying for something that's rapidly appreciating for something that's a depreciating asset. And so as a result, I don't have a new truck. I just can't wrap my head around it. So anyway, it's just and that makes me thinking about the loans,
Great point. Hey, it's great to have people like Terence and Pink Shirt Guy, Thomas, others that are like, experts in the field. I would say, hey, Macro and Cosmo, do you guys know? I know we have a bunch of hands up. Do you know who's next? Is it Peg?
The hands haven't been going down on my computer, so I am not
Oh,
going to be
okay.
any
You
help
don't
here.
know.
Sorry.
Peg, then me, then Pink.
Okay. Let's do
Thanks,
that.
DJ.
Thank
Okay.
you, DJ. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I just wanted to appreciate Thomas bringing up the topic. There's so much resistance to even talking about financial products or thinking about them because, of course, don't ever sell your Bitcoin. But really, if that's our goal, we're going to need some kind of financial products because, like, there's hodlers like me. I'm past my earning years. I'm retired. You're all going to be there sooner or later, maybe sooner. And if I want, I'm driving a 15-year-old Toyota Prius because I'm a hodler. And if I want a new car, it's kind of stupid. I'm sitting on my stack, but if I want a new car, I have to go out and get a loan. And I just won't do it. So there I am in my 15-year-old Toyota Prius. I love it though.
Peg, the issue I think a lot of people are going to have is, especially as you get older, right? The two things happen. One is you're going to realize you're going to run out of time before you run out of money. And
right.
The other point that I would suggest to older folks who are at that point where they're going to maybe exit their productive years in the workforce, earning a salary or a wage, is to think about that concept and what
Thomas, when you say older folks, what are you talking 50s plus?
Yeah, I would say 50 and up,
Yeah.
50 and up, people who are in a position where they can legitimately retire depending on where their financial situation is. But it gets to the idea of, like I said, you're going to run out of time before you run out of money. And you have to decide, each person has different life priorities about life and how they want to do it. And also how you want to take care of your family. So the last thing you want to do, in my opinion, this is my opinion now, is end your life with a huge pile of money just to give it to your heirs who don't need it, and you would probably do more damage giving it to them than you might imagine. So it's perfectly responsible to provide for your family and to give them a safety net and things like that. But you don't want to undermine their life journey themselves, right? They have to make their own way. And again, you want to maybe help but support, but you don't want to give them so much money that they demotivates them from participating in the challenges of life. So
Yeah, that's a good point, Thomas.
Could I respond to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
yeah, maybe can we open up that can of worms a little bit after we get some hands down, because I think Thomas touched on a tender spot there. So let's circle back to that, but we'll let him finish his point, go to TJ, pink shirt guy, and then come back to that.
I was
Macro.
actually going to say, if I could, I have a 1 p.m. meeting, so if I could just
Oh,
go on
okay.
this real
Go
quick.
jam in there. Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say, I understand the sentiment and just respectfully disagree with it, because there are families in Europe that have maintained wealth for literally dozens of generations at this point, and it's not detrimental in any way. For some reason in the US, there's this thing, and I don't know if it's propaganda, if it's cultural, if it's both, what exactly it is, but I definitely hear it from people between my grandparents and parents' age, and I don't see the same sentiment with people my age and younger, which is that basically there should either be none left or a minimal amount left to children. I'm young, I don't have kids. Perhaps my views will change in the future, but to me, it just feels, um, to speak to this kind of traditionally, almost like a betrayal of your bloodline to be like, oh, well, I've amassed all this wealth. Now let me just give it away and not give any of it to them. And it just feels to me like I don't know, perhaps a dereliction of duty to some degree, because if you raise your child properly and you don't just hand them everything on the way, through their development, right? While they're young and coming up, like, could my parents have bought me more stuff? Sure, they could have. But they also said, hey, go cut yards and earn money so that you understand the value of money. And then now that I'm in my adult life, they don't have any money to give me, right? So I'm not an example of this, but if they did, it would not ruin my life and send me off into a drug bender, right? I would just have more money to do more things with, whether that's investing, building upon, that nest egg for their future grandchildren, things of that nature. And so I don't know, it just always has irked me a bit whenever people say, "Oh, you shouldn't leave much to your family, or you should, not amass wealth." That's kind of the whole point of capitalism, is that we as a society build up capital, and over time everybody's quality of life is improved. And yeah, I just don't understand where the sentiment comes from, and I disagree with it, although I think I understand why some people feel that way, because there definitely are people who have their lives ruined when people pass away and just dump $10 million on them. But I would just argue that those people probably didn't have the best upbringing in the first place, because I know right now, tomorrow, you could hand me $10 million and my life is not going to change drastically for the negative. Like, I would just start investing a bit more and have a bit more flexibility on how I spend my time, and that's really the only change that
So,
would
Macro,
happen.
don't think of what I said as binary, meaning it's all or nothing. It's a huge pile of money or zero. I do think it's proper to provide for your family at some level, but I'm just looking at least in the American culture, right? The people who have given, let's just use the term, spoiled their kids.
Hey, can we circle back? Because I do want to. I have my own personal story on this one too, but I kind of wanted to stick to the other stuff, just because we let Macro chime in there because he has to go soon. But we're kind of going down a rabbit hole that I'd love to go down, but I really want to stay on the other topic because I think that the other speakers who have hands up still want to rewind
Sounds
back
good.
to that. Do you
I'll
guys
drop
mind if we do
and
it
then
that
come
way?
back. I was gonna
Oh
say
yeah, no problem.
I'll drop and then come back after my meeting if you guys want to
Oh
circle back
yeah, for
onto
sure.
this topic.
Yeah, that
Is that
sounds great.
cool?
No, I definitely do because I have personal story and whatnot on that one, so I wouldn't mind interjecting on that as well. But
And
the
Lauren, I
what I
can't
would,
see
yeah.
hands for some reason, just
Okay.
FYI.
When you minimize, I think as a host or a co-host, oftentimes it deletes all the hands. So we have to rely on each other in that regard, I think. So I haven't deleted, so I know TJM is up next, I believe. And then it was Pink Shirt Guy. We haven't forgotten about you. I don't see your hand, but we're going to let you go anyway. We do want to hear what you have to say. So TGM, Pink Shirt Guy, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So yeah, just jumping back to the loans topics, I just felt I'd throw yesterday's accounting space in the nest because actually probably about half of that space was talking about this topic. And just to not make everyone go listen to it, I'll give you a quick summary of basically where we ended up. Was currently they're not priced properly for most people, and just as an example of that, it's basically the risk reward is off for the average consumer out there. For myself, I can go get an unsecured line of credit at 8%. So if I'm paying 10% for a fully secured over collateralized loan, that's just a mispricing on the risk and reward there. It makes sense for those with large stacks who can significantly over collateralize and where they don't have access to lower cost credit. So OGs who maybe have maxed out those credit cards years ago and killed the credit score but have a whole stack of Bitcoin that they can significantly over collateralize and ride it through any bear market, as well as can be used in kind of treasury management for well capitalized and especially cash flow positive companies in the Bitcoin space, where again it might be a way to preserve the stack and get credit that is a lower cost than any unsecured stuff for a corporate entity at least. So a couple use cases, but it's kind of mispriced for the average person out there right now. And with SAB 121 being repealed and more of the larger banks coming in, there'll probably be more competition there. At the same time, really look for the proof of reserves and the corresponding proof of liabilities. Because if one of those banks screws up, they can't print more Bitcoin. They can just get bailed out in fiat. So anyway, that was a summary of a good half-hour discussion on the accounting space yesterday.
Nice, well said. I love it. I'm just going to skip straight to PSG, buddy.
Yeah, so weighing in on the Bitcoin-backed loans, it's something I'm very familiar with. I've done a lot of personal loans myself. If you look at my Twitter name, it's Hodl Levered, and that's what I've done. And just some good thoughts for you guys out there
We
thinking
say
about
levered
what's
here,
that?
sir. Levered. We say levered here.
Levered. Well, we say it in
Yeah,
Canadian, eh? So
levered, eh? Yeah,
anybody
that's
who wants to talk more about this, you can reach out at any time. But just a few basic principles to think about. Vet the institution, and once you're satisfied with the institution that you would be doing a loan with, a Bitcoin-backed loan with, then what I'm about to say next is true. And I did my first Bitcoin backed loan at 16.9% APR, and people freak out and go, holy man, like how crazy is that? It's a huge amount. And the reason I did that was because I paid an additional rate so that my Bitcoin was not rehypothecated, because that was important to me. I vetted the institution. I did it when Bitcoin was, I think, in the 40s, maybe high 30,000 range, thinking that there was going to be the increase that would drive my loan to value down. And the advice, not financial advice, that I would give to anybody thinking about doing this is that you do not have to collateralize at the maximum that they'll allow. So if you can get a 50% loan to value, that doesn't mean you have to do that. If you're comfortable that the institution that you're borrowing money from is going to be there tomorrow, then collateralize yourself at 25% or at 30%, and then ensure that you can service the interest rate portion using your income or whatever other means are there. Now, if you're thinking like, well, maybe my institution will go tits up and then I will lose my Bitcoin. Okay, well, then don't do it to begin with. But once you've made the decision to go ahead and get a Bitcoin backed loan, if you are collateralized correctly, not because they said 50% is okay, but because you decided you would post additional collateral so that your LTV is at 30%, then you can simply ride the ups and downs of the Bitcoin, and you get what's your compound annual growth rate on Bitcoin? 60%. I'm not going to sit and complain that I paid 16.9 to capture 60 instead of paying 9.9 to capture 60. I want the 60. So just optimizing for that and allowing the momentum and the moves to happen, because I did not over collateralize myself because the institution was willing to do 50% LTV, doesn't mean I have to do that. And so if you're careful about these things and you're responsible about not being liquidated, you can do some really powerful stuff. And for the record, the reason I did that at such high interest rates, and I've done multiples of these now, is because all of my fiat loan access is already maxed out, hence the name.
Nice. And for those of you who are concerned about the whole financial advice caveat that he threw in there, I do know his real name, address, telephone number, and the like. So feel free to contact me for any potential lawsuits. No, I'm just kidding. That's my attempt at humor.
Don't you threaten me with a good time, buddy. I have no pants on. I'm ready to go.
Pantsless, love it. I, like Terence, lost track of hands, but I believe from memory, which is horrible, we were at Bitcoin Alaska. Sir.
So my issue with the Bitcoin backed loans, it's something I haven't heard anybody talk about, but we like to talk about the loan to value ratio for when you get a loan, and they constantly calculate the loan to value ratio against the loan. So if you go below a certain amount in dollar denominated value, then you have to put up more Bitcoin to back the loan. We look at Bitcoin as pristine collateral, and we look at it as property. But if I buy property and my property gets flooded, or I buy a car, I'm in a flood and my car gets wrecked, I don't have to add more money to the stack as long as I'm servicing the loan. So I just see the loan to value ratio personally as a method of parting me from my Bitcoin, because as long as I'm servicing my loan, the value of the collateral that I put up shouldn't alter the loan. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but it troubles me. It feels to me like somebody's trying to part me from my Bitcoin and take it into their own possession, because we know Bitcoin's volatile against the dollar, but we also know it appreciates over time. So why should I have to add to my stack when the agreed upon amount of Bitcoin to put up for the loan was a certain amount, as long as I continue paying my debt and I have good credit?
I do think that's the future of Bitcoin Alaska. I do believe that you won't have to be topping up to keep your LTV at when you took out the loan, because like you said, Bitcoin is Bitcoin. And so the right banks or platforms that understand that are going to understand the cycles and understand, well, the LTV has now suddenly gone all the way down to, gone all the way up to 80 or 90% or 110%, but it doesn't matter because when you took it out, it wasn't that. And one Bitcoin's one Bitcoin, so it'll come back around, because that is the problem where people get wiped out on those loans unless they have a large stack. So you're 100% right.
But one thing I would say is, if you take out a loan and you use a house as collateral, right, you are obliged by the loan to put insurance on the house, so that if the house is destroyed, the house can be rebuilt to maintain the collateral. So there probably will be products that come out that give you insurance on Bitcoin, but it isn't actually any different to a collateral backed loan. The collateral needs to remain covering the loan in order for the lender to not be put in a risk position. So I don't think it's any different with Bitcoin, actually.
Well, yeah, you're right, Chris. The slight distinction, and is where people misunderstand how real estate loans work, is that a mortgage, your house is not collateral. The person doesn't even own the house. They're getting the loan for the house. Your collateral is your future income. The house is just a lien. They're going to take your house. In fact, they technically own it. You have what's called economic enjoyment, technically.
With a mortgage, yeah, I agree, but you can use your home as collateral for a loan in a different type of way, can't you?
Yes, for sure. But I think the distinction,
and that's the parity that I'm kind of drawing to, and in which case, at that point, you would be obliged to make sure that if the home was destroyed, there was a mechanism for it to be rebuilt and replaced in order to maintain the collateral position on the loan.
right. But yeah, without getting into the weeds, that mostly just covers the mortgage, like any equity that you've built up. So to compare it to Bitcoin, any appreciation of Bitcoin from the point of the loan isn't normally covered with the insurance. Like, if you see what has happened to all of the people in California right now with all their houses, they mostly are getting insurance to just pay the mortgage, and they're walking away losing all the equity that they had in their homes. That wasn't insured.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, you're right. Yeah, it makes
But
sense.
I also think that these collateral loans are the underwriting protocols are they're going to underwrite them based on the collateral, not based on your ability to pay. If you do a more sophisticated loan and cross collateralize it with your ability to pay through other income and assets, then I think the loan to value becomes less of an issue. I was just agreeing with what Pink was saying is I just encourage people before these products become mainstream, and they will, do your studying and understand what Pink said. And I think that's right. Do not max out on what they offer on loan to value. Keep it as low as you can because that
Yes.
protects you from liquidation.
We haven't forgotten about you, KG, Alaska. Pink, you came off mute, so I was assuming you wanted to chime in there.
Yeah, I just go back to the first thing I said is ensure that this is something you want to do. So if you have a fundamental kind of misgiving about they're trying to separate me from my Bitcoin or they're asking for more, I would just encourage you to think about the risk that the lender is taking, right? They're not, the loans I did were not vetted by my personal income or anything. It's just the Bitcoin itself that stands as collateral. And if you're getting into a situation where your LTV is way too high, you're actually protecting the institution providing the loan and de-risking them, which is ultimately what we want. We want the institution providing the loan to succeed so that we don't get some type of crazy catastrophe like we've seen with exchanges and things like that in the past. So if you don't like the idea of collateralizing the Bitcoin, definitely don't do it. But if you've done it or if you want to do it, if you're okay with that, it only stands to reason that if they have less risk mitigation available to them, i.e., they've advanced you more fiat dollars than what your Bitcoin can reasonably cover, then this is what you want. You want the institution to protect itself in order for you to get more Bitcoin.
Yeah, well said. Before we go to KG, um, I think one of the issues that we face going forward is a sketchy past where there was, rehypothecation going on to the degree that, people actually lost out and lost their Bitcoin. And I think that there's hesitancy going forward because of that past. We had punter Jeff on recently. I don't remember exactly when, but one of the things that he was really pointing out also was more a system of checks and balances. For example, creating independent rating agencies, just so that you would feel a little bit more secure with some of these. Like Pink talked about vetting, these companies first, and just having one more go-to point in order to use to vet these kind of places, like a rating agency, would all help. Because I think, like I said, it's like we're navigating a minefield, and it's a little bit scary based on what's happened in the past. So, with
Yeah, I
that,
just
we'll
want to
go.
weigh in one more
Yeah,
real
yeah,
quick
no,
thing
go ahead.
there,
Sorry,
if I
yeah,
can.
yeah,
This goes back to the Bitcoin ethos of full sovereignty and not depending on the institution. I think that's at the core of understanding these Bitcoin backed loans is that the second that you put your Bitcoin up as collateral and they provide a loan to you, you are still the sovereign individual in this scenario, and you don't automatically kind of sit back and go, okay, well, the bank's got it, or this other institution is now going to look after me. Do your own math and do your own research and get good advice on how to calculate what you can sustain in terms of loan to value fluctuations, and don't assume that there's a counterparty involved. Now you can kind of just breathe a sigh of relief and that there's some structure or some system that's going to take care of this now for you. You're still the sovereign individual on all of that.
nice, well said. I think weren't we at KG Alaska, correct?
Yeah, wow, that's actually amazing that you even came up with that because almost everybody says KGAC. I have no idea why I put the little dots in there to separate it. So you're like the only person that's ever said
So
that.
you're from
Um,
Alaska too.
yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I actually wanted to comment on the other subject, and you guys kind of moved on and said you'd circle back to it, so I can wait for that. I kind of put my
No,
hand up when you
whatever,
guys were
man.
talking
Yeah,
about generational
yeah.
wealth.
Go for it. We can go there.
You're good. Yeah, look, I think that you are. I'm very conscious of robbing my children of their ability to create life for themselves. However, I have a trust, and I want my kids to be trust fund babies to an extent as much as I do. But when I set up my original trust for my children, We bought a fourplex for them, put that in the trust, but we based all the rules around their ability to profit from it or even live in it based on A's and B grades if you're in school and working. You can't live there unless you pay rent, which means you're paying into the trust to your other siblings. So you're paying them until you understand how that works. And you can't collect money if you don't live there from the trust, from those rentals, unless you're working. There's no free ride. And I think that's really the point of generational wealth. You got two kinds of families that have generational wealth. Those who just have kids who are just assholes, who don't get it. They never will. They're mean, rude, nasty people because they're wealthy, or they lack moral decency. And then there's those people, I think, that they point, like you guys pointed out, in Europe, and it's not just Europe. Generally, Americans can be entitled, but in Europe, where you have these families who, for generations and generations, have kids that are smart, that understand the money, that get taught how to run it and use it and keep it and still provide for themselves. So I think it's very easy and normal in America to provide both. That is, to let your children grow on their own and discover those hardships of life on their own, but also teach them about money. I've been paying my kids, I swear it sounds so silly, but I've been paying my kids for their chores and their grades in stock, crypto, silver, gold, cash. I just try to teach them all the different types of money and equity out there so they have a better understanding of it, so that when they get out there, they're armed with that knowledge. And when they get that trust that comes to them, which they won't benefit from until they're 25, and that's only if they put the work in. They've got to have those A's and B's in school, and they've got to be working full time, or they don't get the money. It rolls back into the trust. So that's just, I guess my one that I want to point out is those rules can easily be set up. And that's the great thing about setting up generational wealth in a trust is teaching them the taxing side of it, how to avoid those things to maximize the amount of money that they have coming in. That's, I guess, what I wanted to say. I appreciate the time.
No, that's great, man. I think I agree and disagree because oftentimes the truth is in the middle, and not everybody's the same. When I hear a lot of Bitcoin folk talk about generational wealth, they're talking about just their own bloodline, so their own kids and those kids. I think a lot of the generational wealth that is referred to in these examples, we're talking about families and the family last name, like the Kennedy compound and whatnot. And I think um, one of the problems you mentioned was the bad apples. And I'm a psychology guy, and it's the whole nature versus nurture. And, we can chastise people for not rearing their children correctly, which, I definitely agree with. However, I really think that you can't just pin everything on one of these two factors, nature or nurture. And having said that, my own 20-something-year-old kid is I don't really other know how to say it. It's just a mean a-hole, and I can't fathom the thought of giving them money to just be a meaner a-hole to the world. And so, like, there are exceptions to this, and also when we zoom way out and look at kings over different periods, that there can be a king that just is just a rotten apple and just kind of ruins it for everybody else. So maybe in the context of generational being like a multitude of family members that actually have to meet certain criteria before they just get the silver spoon or whatever. But I really think there's not an easy answer like, hey, we're building generational wealth, period. I really think that it's a little more complex than that, and that we actually have to look at both sides of this spectrum in order to really find the truth. Because in actuality, I've had the wind knocked out of me firsthand with a kid that um, is one of those rotten apples. So it's easy to speak from a point of I don't know, being naive over the subject and not having firsthand have a kid turn out that way. I got a couple of great stepkids and other, people in my life that I will feel 100% happy to, have generational wealth passed down to. But I think it's a complex topic, and I think one of the things you also alluded to was the fact that, certain requirements have to be met before, some of this wealth is handed down, which I think covenants, whatever, escrows and whatnot within Bitcoin are being developed, are already out there that can actually accomplish these goals. So to me, Bitcoin is amazing because we can use it as such and be able to make sure certain requirements are reached before we, go ahead and let this generational wealth pass on. even after we're dead. So to me, this is a good thing, and it's an important point to talk about because I do believe Bitcoin will become like immensely valuable in fiat terms and otherwise. So definitely a great topic, and I was eager to go down it just because of my my own personal experience with having a kid turn out like what's caused me a great deal of pain. So with that, I shall shut up. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on that one, but it's definitely something that's always caught my ear, and I've been, tormented for being a bad parent sometimes, and I've really beat myself up over like, okay, what did I do? What mistakes did I make? And you know, I have to forgive myself, even though I can't really think of a lot of things, and my friends and family are there to pat me on the back and say, yeah, man, you were a great parent, but it doesn't help when you get rejection, or your offspring turn out not good. And so it's a really difficult situation to deal with, and I definitely have a lot of sympathy and compassion for people that have walked that path, because it's definitely not fun. So let's go Peg, and then back to our Alaska friend.
Okay, hey, yeah, I'll pick this up. Um, I come from a family of 7 siblings, and I've had 4 sons myself. And I can tell you it's not a parenting problem, because my parents were great, and there have been some good results and some really poor results. And so a lot of other factors come into play. And unfortunately, great, wonderful parents cannot control everything in a child's life, or else all of my sons would be perfect. And sadly, they are not. And one of them has really put me through it. And I've been the same mom with each and every one of them. Um, the good news is my son, who was really awful and put me through everything, um, after about 15 years of really dragging me through everything, has completely turned around and is one of my best friends now. So change happens. So I just want to throw that idea out there. And I don't know. I was thinking, let's talk about Bitcoin and MicroStrategy, because I just found out that MicroStrategy is now simply strategy. There's a bit of news for you guys. Breaking
Wow,
news. Breaking
interesting.
news.
Let's let KG go ahead and throw some more. I'm assuming you're talking about generational stuff again, and then we can switch topics.
Yeah. So in my state, for the longest time, I've been fighting for an end to property tax. And property tax in my state is a local thing. It's not really a state thing, but not a direct end to property tax. How it relates to this is I've been fighting. I don't mind property tax. What I don't like is the perpetual nature of it, because it removes me from ownership. So one way I've been fighting for this is trying to get them to agree to a sunset of 25 years. And if it stays in the family, an additional 5 years once it's passed on. If it's outside the family, the clock starts over. I think I agree with what you said earlier. I would never reward morally repugnant behavior, because that too, just like learning finances, you need to learn that behavior as well. So I totally agree with you on that. I think there's something to be said about a country that's so commercialized, that's so capitalistic, which I love. I'm a capitalist. Um, when your children have a huge hand up coming into it, like having a house or having some sort of money or both or something of that nature. And everything in America, in my opinion, right now, currently is geared towards removing it once the new generation comes in, with taxation and things like that. So I definitely think generational wealth is a huge benefit. And I have 3 kids, so I'm playing the numbers here. The truth is, I don't have any doubt in my mind that at least one of my 3 kids won't benefit from it, either long term or short term, because of their behavior or something of that nature. And that's okay. That's part of them learning it on their own. But without question, if I could do anything, it'd be to teach my kids morality and finances, and then hand them something that they don't quite get to have, but they get a piece of, so that they can do the same thing going on. Because I want to be, my dad was extremely wealthy, but never believed in generational wealth. But I did learn money, and that was a good thing, I guess. So if I could give them both the education of money and some of the money, but only enough not to rob them of creating their own. I think that's huge. That is huge. Too much of your life in the beginning is as a kid, in my opinion, is spent on trying to just get somewhere started, just trying to pull that cord so the engine will run, you know. And I don't falter my dad because I'm a hard worker. I got a great work ethic, but I don't think that had to do with him giving me or not giving me any money. Um, I guess that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, nice. I was curious, Tomer, I really appreciate your takes on things because it really always seems to come from a very kind, loving place. Do you have any input on like this whole generational wealth or family dynamic type stuff? Just curious.
Thanks. I've actually made a movie called Bitcoin is Generational Wealth. Have you seen it?
I have, sir. One of the other reasons I wanted you to weigh in.
Okay. Um, yeah, listen, I've been listening for only about 10, maybe 15 minutes and a little bit distracted, so I haven't followed every detail of the conversation. I would encourage people to watch the film. Maybe we'll share it in the nest if you haven't seen it yet. It's only 15 minutes long, but it's quite powerful. So if you are going to watch it and you have the option, I recommend you watch it on a TV, full screen, lights out, sound up, because it's got lots of sound engineering and nice visuals, so that you'll appreciate the full impact of it. But if you wanted like some thought about, for me, about why Bitcoin can be generational wealth, to put it really simply, it's the fact that, for one, that Bitcoin is forever, and like Bitcoin is not something that can get ruined. You can lose the keys, and so you can lose your fortune. um, But that's true of any. There's some way to lose any legacy asset, but the beauty of Bitcoin as well is it's not an inert asset. It's part of a process, a part of the process of the Bitcoin network that is increasingly weaving itself into the fabric of a progressing civilization, and it weaves itself into the fabric of the electric grid worldwide. It encourages more electricity production and more energy production for humanity. It is greater wealth for humanity. Like our wealth comes down to how much access to energy we have, and that's an it's maybe another issue, but Bitcoin encourages the creation of ever more energy in an ever more sustainable way, and that solves a lot of other problems, of wealth that isn't just measured in currency against, like, an increasing currency base against a shrinking civilization, but in fact a not of leveling out currency base against a growing civilization, and thereby a civilization whose gross wealth is getting greater all the time, and getting greater per unit of currency all the time, because the growth of the civilization exceeds the growth rate of the money supply. So you can actually be building things. I got another phone call there that may have cut me off. So you can be building something, um, over a time span that exceeds your life, and maybe, you know goes into your kid's life or your great grandkids life, and so on and so forth. You can set something up like that, and the movie really tries to speak to these huge macroeconomic changes that that Bitcoin will enable. It's not a solution to micro family problems, and I've heard people talking about and trying to ascertain what the cause may or may not be of challenges between generations within families. It can't fix that in every instance, and the causes aren't the same in every instance, right? That some people are dealt a better hand than others. Some people make honest mistakes that lead to bad outcomes, and they don't know how to fix them. Some people get lucky. Like, there's all kinds of things there. So I can't comment on anyone's individual circumstance. And it's tough being human in that regard. Like deciding to have kids, the effort of kids, trying to raise them with your values that you think are right, or with principles that you think are right. I certainly don't have a magic wand. I've got two kids. They're both over 20. I don't want to get into personal details, but it's not been it's not been easy to raise kids. It's had wonderful moments, terrifying moments, moments of, a sense of a lot of loss, but um, it's just it's something you persevere at for your whole life if you still have hope, which I hope many people do, but I understand how people can find themselves in situations where they're separated from their kids. But that's not like the main point around generational wealth of Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't going to make your kids behave great and have your values. Bitcoin has its own set of values, and your kids may resonate with it. They may not. And I feel like I'm going off onto a tangent of where I may not have followed the conversation. So I'll take a break there and listen to what you guys have to say.
Hey, Tomer, can you post the link in the nest?
Yeah,
We
I'll
have
dig it up.
people. Awesome. We'll
Okay.
go to Chris. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Hey guys, I maybe similar to Tomer, just sort of coming into the conversation. So I think I have a little bit of a gist of this, but this is definitely something that I think about and I care about pretty sincerely. And I think that there's some parallels in my life with what I've heard so far. Um, I come from a family with a father who had nothing, like really, really nothing when he was growing up, and he worked just nonstop to build what he got to, and there were costs associated with that. But he gave us, and when I say us, just my mother and I, because I'm an only child, the ability to be safe and, like all of the Maslow hierarchy stuff. Like we were able to thankfully achieve that. I think once you get past the point of the top of the Maslow hierarchy pyramid, everything above that, the amount that it's now like you have that security. And I look at that delta above like what you absolutely have and what you need as your base, plus, some buffer so that you're not at risk of getting into trouble. That is for me opportunity to affect impact. And it's not like, oh, well, I could take all this additional and go buy, I need 15 yachts or $100,000, 100,000 square foot palatial, thing in Palm Beach or something. Like that doesn't really factor into how I think about it. I look at that as this is money that I can plow into things that can make a bigger outsized impact in a capitalist society. Because the way that we operate today, as everybody knows, is we're in capitalism, and the main driver of that is building businesses. And so the way that I've tried to affect that is through investing in startups. And you, Lauren, and a lot of other people know. But there's only so much impact you can do with that, depending on the amount of capital you have. If I had like Bill Gates kind of money, that would make things a lot easier. Well, about 7-8 years ago, my father decided to sell his entire real estate portfolio, and he did incredibly well. And I went to him and I said, I thought with a relatively reasonable proposition, let's set up a family office. There's a lot we could do with this. And he, I think for a lot of reasons, one, he just didn't want to be bothered with that, have the, headaches associated with it. I mean, it wouldn't, this wasn't like a 9, 10, like crazy kind of size family office that a lot of these other families have. But it would have been enough that I could have made more impact. And that was shot down pretty quickly. And so I have now had to basically do a poor man's family office. And the fuel that has given me to want to provide way more, hopefully at least one, if not several orders of magnitude more to my son, so that he has the ability to affect more change. Because I think really, like, what does life really mean for me? And I would imagine, so I'm coming to the end here. What does it mean for me, and I would imagine a lot of others on stage in this space, is how can we help each other? What are the most effective ways that we can help one another? And we're all equipped differently with how to affect change and help people. But there is one thing that is a massive multiplier for no matter how we want to help people, and that's money. And if you have more of it, and you have good moral fiber and good character, and you care about the world, then you can do whatever it is you want to do. There is a very high probability that you can use money to augment and multiply and scale that impact. And I just want to make sure that my son has the ability to do that. Of course, there are those risks associated with it. So you have to be the risks of them, like I think my father was terrified that I'd become this like shitless layabout trust fund baby. That is pretty antithetical to who I am, but I think he still has that fear at me being practically 50 years old, which is sort of funny. But you have to raise obviously your kids the right way. And if we do a good job, we, my wife and I, and others that feel the same way, of raising their child in a deliberate way, and set up whatever the financial vehicles, trusts, etc., that do not give all that money up front, that, however that needs to be constructed, I look at it as an opportunity to affect more change. So it's not just like accumulating generational wealth just for the sake of like piling on money upon money that you don't really need. It's what can you do with that to make the world a better place? And that's really, really important to me. And that's my motivation behind it. I really I'm doing as much as I can to provide as much, and not just leave, but I hopefully, I mean, it'd be amazing if I could work alongside my son in something that he's passionate about. And that's what I really want to do with my father. And he wanted nothing to do with it. So anyway.
That's awesome, Chris. I think your heart is in the right place, which is loving and caring and kind. It sounded like you were taking shots at Sailor there for a minute when you were talking about I don't need yachts, I don't need this big glorious.
Well, there's somebody else that happens to live in Palm Beach.
Yeah.
If you want to,
no, I know.
You know my problem with that guy.
Yeah, it's all good, and it's crazy because we've had this discussion on like Fred's space earlier on, which not today, I mean back in the day, which is like just different strokes for different folks too. So he tried the airplane thing because cool rich people need an airplane, and we've driven fancy cars, and it's not these things. Consumerism tells us will make us happy, because I think at the core of most humans we just want happiness. And I think like, oh, if I just get the hot tub it'll make me feel better, and these things are little trinkets that actually give you pleasure in the moment and last temporarily, but inevitably it's the things that Chris is talking about, where you're actually building these connections with humans and providing something of value to them. And it's kind of like the ripple effect of relationships, where it's your immediate family, your spouse, your children, and that's where it is the most important, where you spend the most of your time, effort, and energy, and then building those, and that's where you truly find fulfillment and enjoyment in life. But our twisted fiat system dangles these other things and says, no, 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 if you want to be happy, you need this Lamborghini and you need this thing and you blah, 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 blah. And, for me, it's not like that. I've tried some of those other things, and it left me still feeling empty and still needing and wanting more. And so I think you're definitely hitting on some good stuff there, Chris. So I would sign off on your message. Then I think Thomas was next, and then Puncher.
So I relate to all these things, and I spend a tremendous amount of time thinking about these protocols in terms of what and to me, I think one thing that I've really been grounded on is the idea that I don't want to give so much in a selfish paradigm, meaning that it makes me feel good that I'm giving without understanding how it's affecting the person that I'm giving it to in my family. The second one is it takes a lot more effort to figure out how to be creative and setting up the generational wealth that Tomer made the movie about. I have it queued up on YouTube to watch later. But how you do that to make an impact, a positive impact to their life. And everyone's situation is different, so you can't say it's this formula or that formula. But if you translate or just adopt the issue that impact is not necessarily assets, it's assets with a purpose can drive an impact. So just think about that for your family. Everyone's situation is different. I would be the last person to tell anybody how to live, but I do think about it. It's important to me, and it will become more important as we see Bitcoin leg up from this point forward. We hit 250, 500, or $1 million of Bitcoin. These issues or these discussions will become critical.
Yeah, I love that. I just want to touch in before we go to Puncher real quick. Is the motivation, like you just said, is so key. I live close to this mega church called Bethel, and the homeless drug addicts have figured out that they're a easy point to extract value out of. But I really think you hit it on the head when you said, what's the motivation they're doing it? They're actually doing it for their own good because they feel happy about handing $20 to that junkie, not realizing that they could actually be killing them, you know? So I think it's super important to really dig deep on like, hey, what is my motivation in giving? Because really I could be doing more harm than good. So well said.
But by the way,
With that,
Lauren,
we'll go.
this is a really
Yeah, yeah,
important
yeah.
point that I debate with my wife and other people. I will not give, and I live in downtown Chicago. Like there are homeless people right outside of my front gate of our community,
Yeah.
and so I carry food like bar, a protein bar. If I'm walking past somebody, I don't always do this. I'm in a hurry, but I will run into the Walgreens that they're standing out in front of, buy them a protein drink, like a healthy milk or something, and give it to them because I don't want that, as you just said, I don't want that fiat converted into drugs or alcohol or whatever that can actually hurt them. And the debate that my wife has with me is it's not your choice what to do. And anyway, that we start getting into philosophy, but like that's a really important point, and that is, by the way, a hack for people. If you do live in a city or you live where, like, carry a bar with you. It's not only like if you get hungry at some point during the day you can eat it, but I carry like a couple bars in my jacket, because then I know I'm at least giving that person some healthy calories that they might not otherwise get access to if you give them the money, because it's not even their choice. They're not choosing I want the drugs. It's, there's like a chemical, like I need the drugs, and that's a very different thing, but they'll eat the food. I'm sorry, that was a tangent, but something that I really care about.
You're a kind person. Very kind soul. Thank you. Puncher.
Hi guys, jumping in late, but I think it's important to go back to first principles. I mean, my most important job in life is being dad, and as such, you need to ask yourself, what kind of children do you want to raise? And if you ask people, do you want to raise a happy kids, good kids, or successful kids? I'm stunned at how many people say happy or successful. My job is to raise good kids, to instill values in them that are good. If they're happy, great. If they're successful, wonderful. But priority number one is good. I know tons of quote unquote successful people by the world standard who are not good people. By the way, they're not happy. I know lots of happy people who are not good people. I mean, rarer, but I think the core goal is raising good kids, which gets to a more fundamental question. I hear people say all the time that people are basically good. Well, people are basically good. No, people are basically flawed. And it's harder to be a good person. It's harder to do the right thing when no one's looking. It's easier to cheat on your wife when you see a pretty girl. It's easier to cheat on a test if you don't think you're going to get caught. It's easier to pilfer money if you feel like, well, I'm in a jam. Being good means having a set of values that 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 are in compliance with what you as a parent believe to be the morally superior kind of ethos that you're instilling in your children. So, what about babies? They're basically good. No, they're not. They're basically selfish. You don't feed me, I'm going to cry. You don't give me what I want, I'm going to cry. The human condition is flawed. And I think people miss that a lot. And then, with regard to panhandlers, I won't go on and on, but I typically go up and I say, hey, would you like to clean out my yard? I'll pay you. And if they say, nah, I can't do that, then I don't give them anything. If they say yes, I go, hey, you don't have to clean out my yard. Here's $20. Because that person has truly a work ethic, and he's not just a junkie trying to score the next hit. They have an ethos in them that says, I know that person is either down on his luck. I don't even know to know their story. But if they're willing to work, I'm not gonna make you work. I'm gonna give you the $20 just because, that's my technique. But again, those founding principles, and I'll tell you one other thing. When we used to interview pilots to come into a lot of this, I give a hat tip to Dennis Prager. a lot of kids would come into, interview to go to flight school, and I was on the board. And my question had nothing to do with anything other. I say, you're standing on the side of a river, and do you have a dog? And they go, yeah, I have a dog. Do you love your dog? I love my dog. Okay, you're standing on the side of a river, and your dog is drowning, and a stranger that you don't know. Who are you going to save? And typically you get something like, well, I'll save them both. I'm like, no, no, no. This is my scenario. You can save one. It's a raging river. You can save one with certainty. Who are you going to do? And they say, oh, I'm going to save my dog. Why? Well, because I love my dog. I don't want to be in combat with that person. He doesn't have an ethos that values human life over a dog's life. Now, that was my standard. And almost to a person, the guys who answered in that way were very successful in the squadron, integrated well. Believe me, you don't want to be in a squadron or go into combat with someone you dislike. And almost to a person, the ones who got slipped past my question and got in either failed or ended up being a problem, and we shipped them off to some other squadron. So you can criticize that all you want, but I want to know what your foundational core beliefs are if I'm going to be, in a combat situation with you. And people would laugh at it, but I think over time they came around to, oh, here comes Grace's question again, and they all got embarrassed. But I asked it every time, and then I made my vote based on that.
Well said, Puncher. Looks like you're doing a great job raising some cool kids down there. KG, you're
It's
back.
day to day, Lauren.
I feel you.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know how I got dropped out. Something happened on my phone. It went crazy. But I don't want to talk about religion, but I'll say that I'm Christian only to point out that I think that the only thing that you can take with you when you die is your virtue, the mind that you built. And I think that if there's only one thing I could ever give to my children, ever in the whole planet, whether it's money or not, it would be virtue. And that's what I think you were talking about when you were talking about would you cheat on your wife when no one's looking. I tell my kids all the time, the only time it counts is when no one's looking. That's the only time it counts. And the other stuff you said was about the homeless. I've never given them money either, but that's because when I was a kid, it's not a hatred thing. I really feel like you have to earn your way through life. It's a tough life as it is. And when I was a kid, anybody who ever asked my dad for money, he would always just give him a business card. He'd say, look, you show up, I promise you I'll give you a job. I'll even pay you the first day so you have some cash and you leave. But I'm not giving you any money. But I will give you a job. I guarantee. He always owned, 4 or 5 different companies. Sweep a floor, whatever. He was always so in the same mindset of the gentleman who said, I'll pay you to clean my yard. Honestly, that's a good idea too, because even if they just say yes, you know where they're going with it. But I think my dad was always trying to get him to go the mile. I remember one example where he said, right down the road, I just passed a yard sale. And there's a bunch of clothes there. Get some clothes, go to a shower, show up Monday, and I'll give you a job. I remember him asking, what do you want to get paid? And the guy said some amount. I don't remember the amount. And the reaction my dad had was, I think that's a lot of money. But he just said yes. And I think he was really just trying to call the bluff. The guy wouldn't show up, but even if he did, I guarantee you would have paid him for that. And then I really think that's the way to go. Like our goal, or at least mine anyway, I shouldn't speak for other people, is to always help others instill virtue. But the reason why that's so positive is because when you try to help others instill virtue, it requires them to choose. There's no force involved. I'll present an opportunity and you have to choose. And if you don't, okay, but I'm not forcing you. And I really think that's an important aspect. And every opportunity I get, there's no handbook for being a father, every opportunity I get, I try to push my kids that way. One of my sons broke up with his girlfriend and was really rude to her when he broke up with her through text. And I said, you have to, unfortunately for you, you have to apologize. You have to go tell her that you didn't mean to say those things, that you said them out of anger. And I know that's hard, but that's how we build that virtue, is that way right there, doing the hard things, fighting the gravity, if you will. But what's the saying? Parents are the bones that children sharpen their teeth on, right?
Did you say
KG,
he
one
broke
thing.
up over text?
Yeah, he broke up over text and he was rude about it.
The,
KG,
the text part is just funny.
I agree, KG. One thing I'll add is, as a parent, you can read the science behind it, but really your kids get wired at a young age. I think it's somewhere between like 1 to 7. And once you're hardwired, it's very difficult to make any changes. I mean, it's tragic that kids grow up in a less than ideal environment, or we were looking at adoption. We eventually adopted, but international adoption is pretty much closed now. But kids in the Ukraine and kids in Russia at the time, they would go days without having their diapers changed or being touched, or they just cry themselves to sleep and no one comes to them. Those kids are being hardwired in such a destructive way that they grow up with mental illness that just can't be fixed, and it's tragic. So the early years, I'll just say, are the most important years, and if you're not creating an environment that's loving and caring for a child at a young age and instructional, those kids are, man, we're really starting out with almost no shot in life, and it's terrible.
Sorry, I was trying to get Skidoo up here. I think
Hey,
I'm out
Lauren,
of.
I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
want to
yeah.
make one quick comment too on what Puncher said. That's a really smart litmus, by the way, Puncher, on if I don't have a bar, I'm going to try that because I think that is at least you're hedging. At least you're getting a telltale. At least you're getting some indication. And I have done something like not that specifically, but I remember like he wanted money. I go, I'll go in the store and get you a drink. And he was like, no, I don't want that. And then I was, so like similar, but that's a really smart, that anyway, I think that's a really good
We only
suggestion.
have you only have what 3 seconds until the light changes. At least here in Arizona, right? The guy's standing on the corner. You're at a red light. He's right there. You got 5 to 10 seconds to make a determination as to whether or not you're going to do something. So that's what I came up with,
Yeah, in
or whatever.
Chicago, you're walking, but still, you don't want to spend 15 minutes having a conversation with everybody you do that with. But it's just that's a really smart. I haven't thought of that. That's a really good one.
Skidoo, chime in whenever these guys come up for air.
Rightio. Yeah. Yeah, you guys are great. Can you hear me?
10-4, good buddy.
All right, cool. Yeah, you guys are great. So dear to my heart, your conversation. I got 3 kids. I started young at 20. They're all young adults. And they're all amazing kids. I like to think the things that me and their mom did took part of it. And so just kind of chiming in on the whole bandwagon, my ethic for everything was very much like it correlates to Bitcoin because it's like proof of work, meaning like consequence matters. So yeah, I totally like the other fella said, KG, like we were totally supportive and loving of our kids and caring, but yet there was always an element of kind of a tough love, like commensurate with their age, commensurate with their growth. We all chime in, make dinner, we all clean up. When the kids would whine, like I don't want to clean up. It's like, well, cool, don't clean up. I won't make you dinner tomorrow night. Like what goes around comes around, and that just went through everything. I had my kids helping me build our house. I had my kids helping me in a shop with a forge and with oxyacetylene heating metal because I was doing blacksmithing for a living at the time. Homesteading, killing chickens at 5 and 7 years old. And they just turned out to be great kids. By the time they were ready to leave home at the tail end, they were homeschooling themselves. Man, they saved their own money. They bought their own cars. They both saved money, and they took themselves traveling around the world at 17 and 18-year-old respectively on their own dime. And they just have such amazing integrity. And I just think you really gotta both love them, and sometimes you're the bad guy. When you're like, no, no, we're all working right now. I know your friends' parents are making their lunch and they're all going swimming, but nope, we're all doing this together. So that's all I got.
I don't think, in general, people value money, if it's just given to them, or they just don't value it the same way as when they work for it, and so that's kinda what Puncher and Chris were talking about, which I think is a great sort of heuristic if you're trying to help someone out. And, dovetailing, or circling back to what generated this whole conversation about, family generational wealth. Like, it's like I love what Puncher said. It's like, yeah, raise good kids. They're going to become successful or happy, aside from that. But like alcohol, money probably just accentuates. If you're a good person or a bad person, you're going to become more bad or more good. And you can do good, obviously, with money. But, as Bitcoiners, maybe one reason we value Bitcoin so much is because we have done the work. Looking back, we know how much work we had to do. It wasn't just like we woke up and someone said, here's 2 Bitcoin. And we are like, great. Like, we really, it wouldn't mean that much to us, but it does because we have done the work. And, I suppose fiat is the same way. And, maybe, not knowing there's no one way to do it. You set up a family office, you have an irrevocable trust, you don't give money to your kids, you do give money to your kids. Maybe acting sort of like as the family bank is something to consider. Is there a medical emergency? Well, it's nice if you have some Bitcoin that can take care of something or accelerate things faster or get it to the right doctor that you can't through, the fiat system, or a university, or helping out with a wedding, or even helping out, with a loan, helping out, kids with a deposit on a house or something, rather than just saying, here's a chunk of money. I've done so well in Bitcoin. Here, it's yours. Just be responsible. But you're also just there to offer opportunity when they are in between jobs or something, that you can hire them. I don't know. It's just some thoughts.
Good thoughts at that. Puncher, I think, was an excellent, and then Tomer.
Yeah, I think what a lot of parents and it's generational too. Like the World War II generation raised the baby boomers, and a lot of these guys coming back from the war saw a lot of awful things like I've seen in my life. And the temptation is to shield your children from maybe some of the things that you've seen or had to go through, and that's a natural instinct. But what you need to remember is that turmoil and overcoming obstacles and pain, for lack of a better word, is where the growth in life happens. The things that I had to go through, whether it was facing bankruptcy or not carrier qualifying the first time, 1 out of 9, I was the guy who didn't make it. I had to go all back through that again. Or friends of mine who got rolled out of SEAL training only to have to do it again. They med disqualified them last week. Those are the things where you really have to buckle down and figure out a way to overcome, and that's where growth comes from. Growth doesn't come from an easy life. An easy life makes you almost a pathetic character. Like I see a lot of kids and or older adults who are given everything, and I'm not to pick on Michael Jordan's kid, but I mean, he's in the news, and the only thing he could come up with was my dad's Michael Jordan. Like, come on, bud, like own your stuff. And they're not given an opportunity to overcome those obstacles, and it makes them a weaker person just all around.
Thanks,
Indeed.
guys.
Tomer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did as you requested, Lauren. I shared the movie Bitcoin's Generational Wealth in the Nest. But when I was just here listening to Terence speaking, it inspired me to share a short article that I'd written in the Nest as well, which is called "Rich or Poor: Bitcoiners Have What Money Can't Buy." And I really encourage people who are thinking through these themes to read it, because what that article is about is uh, how putting the work in to become a Bitcoiner gets you a lot of these things that we're talking about here: integrity, character, ethic, all that kind of stuff. And it connects the points as to why doing that work gets you these things. I won't spoil it or waste everybody's time reading the whole thing here, but it's remarkable that elements there are certain, like it starts with, there are certain things money can't buy. Like it can't buy you friendship, it can't buy you love, it can't buy you integrity or honesty or a lot of virtues. Those things just aren't for sale for money. They come through effort, and to become the process of becoming a Bitcoiner isn't just you have money and you decide willy-nilly to put it into Bitcoin, there's a whole process that you have to go through about verifying the truth and meeting people and whatnot. And this article like will take people through their journey, or point out to them where they are on their journey, and connect the dots as to why you find in the Bitcoin community these individuals who have high integrity and value and cherish honesty and become friends with one another, and why we tell each other we love each other with sincerity, because because the article reveals it. So I won't ramble on it any longer, but it inspired Terrence's comments, inspired me to share it.
I love that. Yeah, I definitely encourage people to check out all of Tomer's work. Like I mentioned, as much as I can, the intentions of somebody are huge, the motivations. And I really love the fact that it seems that all of his writings and works come from a place of kindness and love. And I just really appreciate that about you, Tomer. I think we were at Christopher, and then
Looks like
am I
I
not?
think Pubby's first.
Oh, was he? Sorry. Hey, Pubby. Sorry. And then, oh, Dark's here too. I
Okay.
can only see two hands,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
help
Before
me
you
out
ask,
here if you
before
can. Yeah,
you
yeah.
ask,
Okay,
I
okay.
just ordered my first beer, so had 2 sips.
Cheers.
Okay.
Cheers to you.
Yeah. Cheers, everybody. Yeah. I'll tell you what. My parents had divorced. I was quite young, and
Pubby, you got any kids?
Is this going to be a long flight, Pubby, or a short flight?
Yeah, Pubby,
it'll
we
be.
may crash land you halfway through, but you got any children? Do you have
I
offspring,
have a.
sir?
I have a daughter. I got a 15-year-old
Nice,
daughter.
nice.
No, but just long story short, um, my stepfather was like first generation German and was a total dickhead. Uh, just working our ass. I mean, literally work in a garden, Fridays, Saturdays, all of this. And we were talking about efficiencies, Tomer. What we used to do, my brothers and I, because we were in charge of doing dishes, and what we do, like in the summer, is we clean up all the dishes right after dinner, clean everything up. So the only thing we had to do was maybe some breakfast dishes. Uh, Basically, he made a rule: we could not do dishes the night before. He would set them out for us to do in the morning, crusted over. So that's the. But I'll tell you what, that's the kind of thing that made me want to go out and get a job and leave. So yeah, I'll tell you what, sometimes you got to be a hard ass to your kids to light a fire under their ass there. I'm landing the plane early today for you, Lauren.
Oh, hey, that you caught me off guard there. Help me out, Terrence. I don't know who is next here because I see
I saw
only
Dark
two.
Side and
You don't
Christopher.
know what order
Yeah,
it
let
goes.
let Dark go first.
All right.
Okay, yeah, I can't see any hands.
Yeah, Dark is up.
Dark, how's the conference or whatever it's called?
It's going well. Also, I've been in attendance at Gary Cardone's
Oh, okay,
event.
you're coming out and saying it now.
Family off.
Yeah, and I detect
Yeah,
just
go
a
ahead.
slight note of sarcasm in your voice, but go on, sir, please.
No, it's actually been extremely eye opening.
Okay.
I'm a big, everybody knows, I'm a Bitcoin maxi, and I've tried to come here with an open mind. And I can tell you that there's an enormous volume of money that's going into altcoins, utility coins, and the DeFi space. That I can report that it's not a small movement; it's a large movement. Um, and I think where I land on this is not the issue that I have is that somehow Bitcoin is being lumped together with crypto, right? And they're really two very, very different things. You have on one end, you have a decentralized asset that's perfect money. On the other end, you have what I'll call less centralized tokenization of assets, these utility kind of tokens. Um, they're very different things, right? Like that, the fact that they're being lumped together is, I think, what's causing the angst and consternation amongst the Bitcoin community, and I understand that. Um, that being said, having sat through a number of sessions and really focused, I can envision a world where there's a use case for less centralized um, technologies, if that makes any sense.
Yes, but we don't want
Because
to open
Bitcoin
that can
is
of worms again. That's kind of how we started this. So
Oh yeah, of course. I just
No,
joined,
no,
so I'm
you're
not
fine.
sure
You're
where you
fine.
guys
I
have.
just didn't want to go down that rabbit hole again. Go on. So,
Yeah, no, I'll just I'll just say that just giving you the 40,000 foot flyover. That world is just it's not a. I don't think that train is going to be stopped. Um, that being said, it's good. There's plenty of Bitcoin maxis here, and I guess another takeaway for me is that we haven't really landed in a world where the financialization of Bitcoin is occurring, right? It's on the horizon. There's a lot of people talking about it, um, but we're not yet there yet. I spoke to some very very smart people, OG accountants, people that have been here from the beginning that have a different perspective, and it's been extremely eye opening. And I've gotten some good names of people to bring on spaces that can really educate people as far as what's really happening in the world of accounting and tax and IRS as it relates to Bitcoin. So yeah, I'm really glad I came. I'll say that, and it's been extremely eye opening. And I'll land the plane here and say that I haven't really heard anybody talking about meme coins, which is extremely
okay. Yeah,
refreshing.
that's good.
So there's really not a focus on fucking people, right? The big money in the space is chasing, things with real, at least perceived real world utility. So I guess that's a positive. But again, I think that lumping together, utility software, which is really what this is, that has a token with Bitcoin is a disservice to our community. But that's just the way it is, right? Because they
Agreed.
seem to trade out the same exchanges, and it's I think it's just something we're going to have to live with.
Yeah. Good stuff. I don't know whose hand was up next. Terrence, did you see if there were hands?
I think it's me
David?
now because I passed
Okay,
the
Chris.
mic
Yeah,
a
just
couple
Okay.
times.
Chris.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah,
if you minimize, it seems like the hands go away. So I
it's a pain in the
apologize.
ass. Yeah,
It is. I apologize
it's
if
such
we're not.
It
fucking
I'm
means
not
you
pain.
have
trying
to
to
stay
exclude
here. You have to be
anybody.
present. Don't go
Yeah.
scrolling.
Don't go scrolling. No, I was trying to reply to other things, blah blah blah. So go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Just a broken platform. Before I say what I was going to say before, I want to re-emphasize how much I appreciate two things with Darkside. One, he's brave. He's going out of his comfort zone, not just for the benefit of himself, but for all of us. He led with, I'm really glad I went here because I'm meeting all these other interesting people that I can bring onto spaces. That brings value to every one of us. And that's how I met all you guys. I met you guys through spaces and having interesting conversations. And I'm forever grateful to all of you for the information and the knowledge that I have gleaned over the past just couple months. It's just a few months ago. It was really like right after the the Trump election that I jumped into this. So I really wanted to highlight that. Thank you, Dark. That's really valuable. The other thing I wanted to say was like I really appreciate also because this is Trump. Dark has used the terminology that this has been a spiritual journey for him. So to be open to allowing the evolution is also that can be very hard and difficult. And I just really appreciate Dark's humanity with all that. So okay, so I'm going to give a quick anecdote because I think this is really valuable. It was something that I learned in my early 20s. Um, how do you get people to be motivated and hungry and want to work? And this goes a little bit to what Puncher was saying uh, around like the trials and tribulations and going through the shit is what makes you a better person. You learn more when you're in the worst moments of your life. Like those are the moments to pause and be like, this is actually really valuable. This is when I'm like going through that toil, going through basic training or buds, if you're in the SEALs or two-a-days if you play sports, whatever, like the stuff when you're really in the shit, that is when you're learning and growing the most. And what doesn't kill you really does make you stronger. There's a fine line there sometimes, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And one of the ways that I found is a hack for this, especially for those that they have no desire for things because they live at the top of Maslow's hierarchy. And I was Puncher's going to giggle because I used to live in Scottsdale, so he's going to this example is going to be a little bit close to home for him. I used to coach when I was just out of college. I was a year out of college, and I coached at this high school in Scottsdale, Chaparral High School. In 1999, we had the first ever state championship lacrosse game, and I was coaching these kids. I was an assistant that year. The next year, I was a head coach, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was like certainly shooting from the hip. But the big takeaway from this, and kids at Chaparral, for the most part, their parents are rich. They had whatever they wanted. And I knew the kids that were at that field, and by the way, we won like the first state champion. It was a good team. And I helped kids get into good programs after that, which was also, that's another story. But I knew there were going to be kids that were just dropped off at the field because their parents wanted to do this. And I basically put the cards on the table. I said, look, some of you guys that are sitting around the table here, the analogy is you're running and I'm running behind you and I'm pushing you, and you're only going as fast as I can push you. And there are others that love this, and they love it at their core. They're passionate about this. And no matter how hard and how fast I try to run and push them behind them, they're always going to be faster than me because that passion inside of them is pulling them towards their goal, towards their passion. And I think that's a really important takeaway, because whether it's something that now, of course, some people out of survival, you have like fear is a very strong motivator as well. But if you don't have as much fear, if there aren't as many things that, because you're so high on Maslow's hierarchy, where do you get that deep level of motivation? And passion is an awesome force for that. So I am very passionate about helping people find their passions, especially young people. And this is going to sound sort of cheesy, but I realized through that experience of coaching for 6 years in my 20s that I'm actually at the core a passion guide. And I try to help people discover A, what passion is, and then B, what their passions are. Because if you really want to have people self-motivated, the best way to do that is not running from behind them and trying to push them towards a goal, is give them that passion or let them achieve that passion inside of them, and they will run faster than you can possibly imagine. So anyway, that's the best hack that I have for the overly fortunate and those that don't have, lower on Maslow's hierarchy, if that's helpful. Sorry if
Good
that
old
was long.
Maslow. Hey, we got Joe in here. Joe, how are you doing today, sir?
Yeah, good afternoon.
Well, yeah. Oh, sorry. Right. It's morning here. Afternoon where you're at.
Lauren, I jump
Yeah.
in real quick,
Go ahead.
because I know you always respect the hands as well.
I respect
And I
the
know
hands. I respect
you
the hands.
respect the hands, but it's I can't pronounce it. I'm in bed. We had a hand up for a long time. Just
Oh,
put it
really?
out there.
Yeah, I did not see that hand.
That's
I'm in
okay.
bad week.
Thank you so much. Guys, can you hear me well? If so.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for having me on the stage. Actually, I believe that we're kind of global community in here. So speaking of Bitcoin as generational wealth, let me just give you a bit of background about myself so you get my point. I'm Egyptian from Cairo, Egypt, and we currently kind of have a completely different culture when it comes to living with our parents until we're usually uh, either male or female. We're living with our father and mother until we get married or completely leave the country or something like that. So the fact that you bring up a baby who is resilient is a matter of fact of how you show up in your life and how you treat them and what you're doing to make them that good personality, kind personality, if we can say so. So basically, it's in my family, for example, I'm um, I'm a single mother, and I'm the only person in my whole family, the big family, who opt to buy Bitcoin and really doing it bit by bit, fractional payments and so on. But what I'm doing is I'm educating my two boys. I'm educating and showing them how to be the right person, how to be kind to themselves and to the world around them, and how to be independent as much as possible. Because if we're not showing them the what we ask them to be, I don't believe that you can learn unless from someone who told you to do something completely opposite to what they are doing. So that's another one, another thing that we can just look at it. But as I wrote in the replies, that education is key, regardless how young, big, or them are they. Just let them
Hey, Evan,
in.
we got a couple people that have a hard stop.
Yeah.
We're supposed to go at 11:06. So, can you? I was hoping to hear from Joe, but we might have lost Joe. Joe's gone, isn't he? Anybody see Joe? Shoot. Anyway, sorry to
No,
interrupt you, but I
Joe's.
was hoping
Oh
you
yeah,
could.
Joe just dropped. Sorry.
Okay. Anyway, I just was hoping you just to condense it down a little bit. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I'm done with with what I have to say, but it's just the educational piece and just be the thing that you want to be teaching others.
Thank you. I think we will probably just go straight to wrapping it up. So let's maybe get some. Anthony just jumped on, so we'll give him a shot at the mic, and then we'll just go through the speakers and maybe just give parting words and wrap it up. Anthony, welcome to the stage, sir.
Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, I just wanted to jump on here and say that when the guy was saying that you can't have people, or you shouldn't push people, like they gotta want to do it. There's this thing where they figured out some guy did an experiment with some dogs, and they put them in a cage with they put dogs in a cage without the collar to shock them, and then they put dogs with the collar to shock them. So every time they try to escape, they get shocked, and after so long, the people or the dogs would freaking they'd they would get the opportunity, the doors would open and everything, but they'd still choose not to run out because they were trained or they're already like traumatized by thinking that they're going to get shocked, right? So that's kind of how I think some people do need that extra push, like some people do, like they'd feel like paralyzed, like I have in the past. They feel paralyzed to do anything, so they kind of do need somebody to like go into the cage and pull them out, because the dogs wouldn't come out until somebody actually went and pulled them by their collar, and they still like fought them trying to get out. They still try to stay in the cage, they're that scared. You know what I'm saying? I just wanted to
That's
say
why
that,
we
guys.
shock the crypto bros. We shock them as much as we can.
That's all I wanted to
Yeah,
say, though.
it's that's a good point, and that goes back to the core of what I was saying was I was their coach and I was trying to help them realize this. So you do need to help them along that path, but once they have that self actualization where they go, "This is something I deeply love. I'm passionate about this." You're just guiding. That's what coaches do. You just guide them to the things that they're passionate about, or maybe they're not, and that's fine too. You can be passionate about lots of things. Didn't have to be lacrosse. It could be whatever. But finding that thing, you do need, as you said, you need help to get yourself out of, whether it's because you have past trauma or whatever that is. We all need that helping hand to discover that passion. You don't just like, I mean, some people do, but it's rare when somebody's just like, oh, I decided I'm passionate about lacrosse. Like, where'd you find lacrosse? You have to like help them to whatever that thing is. So absolutely, completely agree.
I would just add here, one, how cool was it? And this is why I love the Bitcoin community in general. This lady comes in from Cairo, Egypt, right? We're around the world, and we're meeting people from around the world and seeing how Bitcoin, affects them. I think that's fantastic. I know. I'm sorry, Lauren, that Joe had just a short time frame there, but I just think that is so cool. The people that we get to meet and hang out with around the world. and to punch anyone talking about because I grew up you playing sports, and I think this was I tied this into trying to orange pill people. You can't want it for anyone. I can't will somebody to work out or diet. I can't will somebody to want Bitcoin. The proof of work is what made them hungry to understand the difference. They read books. They thought. They saw some things that said, you know what, this Bitcoin is interesting. This is now my passion. You can't teach any kid that's hungry and has passion. You can't teach it. So yeah, I like that thought too, man.
Good stuff. Let's go. Maybe parting words from Puncher. Still around, buddy?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I love these Bitcoin spaces. I mean, it really is the highlight of my day, and hang out with Bitcoiners more and more. It's just awesome. I will say, you rise to the level of your fascination in life. Finding what that fascination is, and it's different for everybody, is the challenge, right? So if you feel like you're being steered in a direction that's just in your gut, not right, whether it's a job or a sport or anything, resist that temptation and go to where you're passionate, because when you're passionate about something, it's not work anymore, it's love. And you just, if you can get paid for it, that's even better. And you know doing that self-actualization, that's where people need help. And I really like what Chris said. Helping people break out of that kind of mindset where you're doing what you're told, do what you're passionate about, and life gets better and better and better.
Man, I love that.
Can I just make one comment on that, Lauren, just quickly? The
No,
thing
you
that
can't make any comments. You're
just, it's very quick. This is
reached the
like
threshold
five
of. No,
seconds.
I'm kidding.
This is your final
Yeah,
comment,
this is
or do you
it.
want to
This is,
use that?
I'm
Do you want to
done.
use
This
it?
is it.
Okay, you use
No,
it.
this is my final. This is it. What I told the kids when I retired, I put my cards on the table. It was literally, it was to Puncher's point. I said, look, not all of you are going to love lacrosse as much as I love lacrosse, but my hope for them was that they would say, hey, I want to find that thing that I love as much as Coach loves lacrosse, because it is impossible for me to be anywhere near a lacrosse field and not be batshit crazy, like screaming, and just like the passion flows, whether I'm playing or coaching or reffing or whatever, a fan. And that was my hope, was that they would just say, I might not love this that much, but man, I need to have that thing that gets me as fired up as Coach does about lacrosse. And that was like hopefully the big takeaway, whether they loved it or not. Hopefully they learned. That's how you learn what lacrosse, what a passion is. You got to see somebody else have it.
Did you make lacrosse coin?
Don't joke, man.
Ooh, too soon. That's wonderful. Seems like you could probably have a lot in common with Marty Bent, because I believe he's also a huge lacrosse
Is that
fan.
Cosmo?
So.
Because Cosmo is a big guy.
Oh, Cosmo is as well? Oh,
Yeah.
No, Marty is TF, whatever, help me out here. TFTC, the one of the OGs. Anyway, I used to listen to
TC,
him.
the time coin guy.
No. This is the oh gosh, I used to listen to him when he'd broadcast from his father-in-law's bedroom and stuff back in the good old days. Marty Bent and Mr. Gosh, my old brain is just frazzling right now. I can't think of their names, but no,
The
he's
guy,
a
the
You're
guy who
thinking of
finishes saying "Beep."
Odell. You're thinking of
yes, that guy.
Odell and
Odell,
Parker
yeah,
Lewis and all the Austin
right. Marty
guys.
Bent and Odell did the TFTC together, and then different stuff. And it was podcast back, I don't know, 5 years ago. But yeah, he donated a lot of stuff to Owls Lacrosse and whatnot. So yeah. Anyway, didn't mean to get off the little bunny trail there, but seems like Pubs, are you gonna fire up a toxic happy hour after this? We're gonna go to
No, I might fire something
okay,
up.
yeah,
Just to close out with what Christian was saying, when it
sure.
comes to something like lacrosse, people say is like a fringe sport, much like Bitcoin's a fringe activity. And this is that you can hear the love and passion in his voice for it. Okay, much like you hear the love and passion that I sat down and actually did a calculation of the amount of hours that I've been hosting spaces and making memes, and yeah, dude, it's like almost 1,000 hours a year. And to put that into perspective, Most people work about 2,000 a year at their regular 9 to 5 regular job. So you guys in here, everyone that listens, you're putting in the hours to something you're passionate about. And I don't think many of you are getting paid, much like a lacrosse coach. I can't imagine getting paid. I think I got a $10, I got a $10 strike edition. Yeah, this is what it's about. You find what you're passionate about, and man, you can't be stopped. You cannot be stopped at that point because you do it with nothing you want in return. You do it because you know it's the truth.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to get out of bed in the morning when you find that passion. Just wanted to throw out that 999 of those 1,000 hours that Pubby was doing those spaces, he had either a beer in one hand or both. Just throwing that out there. Dark side sounds like, yeah. Go ahead, Pubs. You want to? I guess I
Well,
can't just rub you
just
like that.
yes, you think
Hanging.
you may think I was losing money over the years, but it's after the
No, no,
second
no.
pint or maybe the third. That's when you triple stack. You just fuck it. I'm
Triple
buying
stack
more
pints.
today. Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Triple stack sats should
my
be
bar tab has paid for itself, my friend, for 7 years.
7 years. Love it.
It's like
Dark
drunk
side.
buy versus drunk text. It's great.
Yeah. That fingered the hell out of that buy button. I was hammered. Dark. Sounds like you're gonna have some exciting spaces coming up here. You got some a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. But I'll just echo Tomer's article. Rich or poor, Bitcoiners have what money can't buy, and that's just one of the most beautiful lines, man. I really appreciate Tomer.
Yeah,
Just get smarter every
definitely
time I listen to him, man. Thank you.
agreed. Thomas, you still around?
Yeah, just sitting here listening. I enjoyed this conversation today. I think there's a lot of future conversations to talk about. Specifically, I think there's a lot more to talk about the ethos of how one provides for one's family as a result of what is likely to be a massive rise in Bitcoin over the next year or two.
Yeah, I love it. I think one of the difficult things navigating through calling people out for scams and educating them on something is to really look at their intentions. And I think, Thomas, you're in a good place. I don't think you have bad intentions. And I think we started off the space that way. And I think that when we do find people in that boat, to treat it differently than the old school accountability method of just being extremely toxic to people, because that's the way we destroy relationships, and that's definitely, we're not getting anywhere that way. So appreciate you, Thomas. Terence.
I'm all good. I defer my time to you, Lauren. It's been a
I just
great
kind of was
space, very
rattling off
fluid.
the.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy because we very seldom have any topics, and it just kind of go with, often breaking news or what people are wanting to talk about inside of the group, which is one of the reasons that I was drawn to these spaces in the first place. Not, you know, it, there was organic stuff that grew up around Fred and whatnot, but it to me, I was attracted to the community, and I think I would do my fiat job, and thankfully I could have an earbud in and be listening, and I drew a lot of value from that, and then from listening to podcasts, which seem like, often week old news, to actually being able to hear people interact in the moment was a lot more exciting to me. So I think keeping it real, where we just have people up here and we're all the same, even though we have different walks. And I love hearing everybody's different story, because it's crazy. You see people even in the flesh and meet them in real life. You don't really get to see what's behind all that facade and whatnot, and their pains and their, like, we're all human, we're all fallible. I think Puncher brought that up. And yet deep down in there is like the same stuff and the same, like traumatic stories and whatnot. And we try to, put lipstick on and make ourselves look like this facade, and then deep down we're like hurting, and we have struggles and whatnot. So I like the fact that we can come here together and, have a hive mind where we can actually grow together, learn, empathize with one another. And it's all surrounding around Bitcoin. I know people sometimes give us crap because we get off topic, but in actuality, when you're actually talking about value in your life, this is Bitcoin, because Bitcoin represents value, and you determine what value is to you. I don't. And so we, the people, the collective will of people, are determining, like, hey, we need a new value keeping system, because ours has been yanked out from under us, and in a sense, we've been slaves. And so I really think that we need to keep our eye on the mission of promoting Bitcoin above all else, even if some of these things have a shot at doing some other random thing good for society, that's secondary to my mission of Bitcoin. And we need to hammer Bitcoin down until it actually becomes, a standard or unit of account that is actually recognized around the world. So to me, that's our mission, and that's why all this stuff ties together. I loved all the family stories, and people were sending me messages on the side and trying to read them all and whatnot. And it's very touching to hear everybody's stories. And I hope we can continue to have these spaces and then we all get value, because I sure get a hell of a lot of value out of it. I'm not, smarter or don't, think I'm better than anybody else. And I'm not trying to do anything to promote myself or make quote unquote money or whatever. So I'm just here for the same reason that y'all are here, just to learn from each other and enjoy the space too. So with that, I will shut the hell up and end this space. Love y'all. Have a great rest of your day. Talk soon.